All right, we are up and running. Dr. Lucas Arruda, warm welcome and thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's my first podcast. So
oh yeah?
It's nice to kick off.
Well, I'm honored that you would be on my podcast, the first podcast of your life. So that's great.
Thanks for having me, by the way.
Much appreciated. So I'll start by setting us up a little bit with how this conversation happened. So at the start of this year, I read this book called the Pfizer Papers by Naomi Wolf. I'll leave that over here. Which is a book that analyzes the the studies and documents that that Pfizer submitted to the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration in the U.S., to get an approval to start licensing the COVID-19 vaccines.
Exactly.
And I read it in January, and I am not an expert in this field. My background is in engineering, so once I read it and was pretty blown away by the stuff I read in it, I figured I need to talk to someone who has a background in this area to kind of obviously hear your thoughts on the book and kind of bounce my thoughts off of someone who knows what they're talking about. And the interesting part about this book is these documents were private. All of these studies and adverse event reports and all that stuff, they were private, and the FDA, when asked to make them public, said it would take them 55 years to go through the documents before they can release them to the public.
It's a lot of papers, yeah.
It's a lot of papers, but the same documents were reviewed in a few months to get the Pfizer's mRNA vaccines approved. So it was kind of interesting. And then this nonprofit called the Public Health and Medical Professionals for Transparency sued to get the papers released. And that's why they are now public. They won this lawsuit. So the documents are now public and can all be found on phmpt.org. So anyone can review the documents themselves if they want to check them out, if they don't trust the authors or whatever. So they're publicly available. That's a little bit of an intro about the book. And obviously, when I started asking people around about, do you know anyone I can talk to, an immunologist or pathologist or something, I was recommended you, and you were so kind to agree. So you borrowed the book from me, read it, and now we're here. Whew, that was a long intro. But before we get into the book, tell me a little bit about yourself, your background, your education, research, work, whatever, wherever you want to start.
Exactly. So, disclaimer: I am not an expert on COVID or vaccine development. I'm a pharmacist by training. I have a master's and PhD in immunology, so I know about the immunological aspects. But of course, we can discuss basic knowledge on the virus itself, the vaccination and everything. I have been working in Karolinska Institute for many, many years, especially with cancer immunotherapy. So basically using your immune system instead of fighting infections to fight cancer.
Right.
And also using that for in cell therapy in general. So basically I'm an immunologist and a pharmacist. So I have been working with that for a while, yeah.
Cool. For people who don't know, immunology, what does it mean?
Immunology is quite a sexy name, and nowadays it's because of the pandemic, of course. Yeah, it's everywhere in the headlights. Immunology is the biomedical science or part of medicine that studies our immune system, which means the system in our body, among many others, that takes care of protecting us against infections. Right, and sometimes even against yourself in case of cancer, because the immune system also does tissue fixing or reparation, depending how you want to name it, and also we call it immune surveillance. It's basically to go around the body, trying to find infections, cancer cells, and try to keep you healthy, basically. So that would be the T cells, B cells, all of that stuff we sometime read about in back in school. Yeah, exactly. So in my master's and PhD, I worked with autoimmune diseases. So it's basically when your immune system kind of lose control. And instead of just protecting you against infections, it sees your body as an infection. Or it like misinterpret that your own body cells and proteins could be actually a foreign pathogen or something bad. And then you have this autoimmune disease like type 1 diabetes, multiple sclerosis, systemic sclerosis. There are many autoimmune diseases. And then later in my career, I changed to, instead of using our immune to understand the immune system for autoimmune diseases, to treat cancer. Because that's the kind of like the breakthrough of the last decade, how to use the immune system to fight cancer. Yeah.
That is amazing. I had not heard of that before. So you can use the immune system to fight like cancer cells.
Exactly.
A cancer cell, if I'm not mistaken, is a cell that keeps replicating, or it never dies. It just keeps multiplying and growing, and that's a tumor, I guess. A collection of cancer cells that just don't want to.
Yeah, cancer, it's a broad definition for many things you can have, but basically all of these subtypes start with a mutation in your genomic DNA. So basically the genetic material have inside the nuclei of a cell that dictates all the actions that cell will have.
Right.
So if that cell needs to grow, if it needs to eat, if it needs to do A, B, or C. But then over time it accumulates many mutations. Normally our body has mechanisms to fix these mutations. But when you accumulate for many times, many rounds, then that cell gets malignant. So it's malignant transformation. So it loses control of many aspects of the cell biology.
Right.
So it should stop growing, but it doesn't. It should stop making new vessels to attract more blood flow, but it doesn't. So it does lots of things that it shouldn't do. And then it's a malignant transformation and have cancer.
Right.
Yeah.
I think I told you when we met last time that I have an autoimmune disease, so I've become very acquainted with what's going on with the immune system, and it's so fascinating.
No, it is. It is the most complex system because basically it's everywhere in the body. It does everything. It's everywhere. It's important for everything.
Yeah, and it's like if you zoom in, it really is a war, between...
It is. Constant war,
between viruses and
yourself,
different,
your own cells, the viruses, things that... But the food you eat, why we don't reject the food you eat?
Yeah.
Because the immune system is trained to don't. Why it doesn't attack you? Because it's trained to don't do that.
Exactly.
But when you get an infection, then it's trained to do it.
Yeah.
So it's a fine tuning between all those little things. It is amazing.
It is absolutely
It is a great
crazy.
time to be an immunologist, to be honest with you. Because of the cancer immunotherapy. There's a lot of drugs and a lot of new therapies coming up that's based on that. And also because of the pandemic.
Yeah, of course.
It's kind of sad because no one wants to have cancer or
be
living in a pandemic time. But it's good to be an immunologist.
I bet. How does that work? Like, how could we train the immune system to attack cancer cells?
Yeah. There are many ways of doing that. It's complicated to explain all of them in just one single shot, but you can do that by when the immune system is trying to fight a cancer cell. Because imagine like a cell that is being transformed now, it's becoming malignant. So we have these mutations in the DNA. Normally these mutations can be seen by the immune system. So that's called immune surveillance. So the immune system is going around, it can see it, it can kill it.
Right.
But then the cells will accumulate more mutations and then it's going to find ways to go around.
Yeah.
Or to induce the immune cells to don't be so strong, to be exhausted, to have less juice to attack the cells. And then you can use drugs to make the immune system stronger again.
Okay.
So basically you modulate all these changes that are being induced by the malignant cells into the immune system in order to release these breaks. It's called immunotherapy. That's the broad name for everything. But for this specific type of immunotherapy, there was a big wave of drugs that came out that's called immune checkpoint blockade. So basically when the immune system get exhausted, it starts to express some proteins. They're called exhaustion markers, which are checkpoint proteins that normally would exist to avoid you to destroy your own tissue.
Right.
But then the cancer is smart, it plays around with that.
Yeah.
So it kind of teaches your immune system to see cancer not as a foreign body, but as something that is yourself, which is kind of it is, but it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
But then you can block that using a drug.
God damn, so crazy.
There are many drugs to do that. But nowadays, there's other more sexy ways, let's put it this way, which is you can take your immune cells out of your body and engineer them in the lab, ex vivo, by using many cool techniques. And then you can boost your immune system, can make it stronger, can make it more specific for given targets. For example, if you have a blood leukemia, there is normally not a mutation, but there are associated markers that you can find in the leukemic cells that you can make your immune system very specific to. It's called CAR T cells, chimeric antigen receptor. So you take your immune cells, you engineer ex vivo, basically to give a gun to the immune cells and a target. Then when you give it back to the patient, it knows what to do. So it can kill the tumor cells.
It's cool. It's cool. This is crazy. Is that done through CRISPR technology, cutting and pasting DNA?
Not yet. Unfortunately, it's coming.
Okay.
It's coming. Yeah. Nowadays, it's being done by viral transduction.
What does that mean?
So it means that because the key thing that you need to do is to deliver a genetic material inside the immune cells. Right. There are many ways of doing that. So
that's when you said engineering previously. That's what you mean, like changing the.
Exactly.
Is it DNA? No, exactly.
It's another one.
Is it called DNA when it's in a virus, or RNA? Maybe.
Yeah, most of the technologies using viral technology use RNA viruses.
Right.
But we have DNA viruses as well. Yeah, you can do both, but most of them are RNA.
Okay.
Yeah, but basically you take a virus, you modify the virus. The virus cannot infect anything. It cannot multiply. It's insanely safe. And then you make this virus, instead of infecting you or multiplying, it only delivers this message to immune cells.
Yeah.
And this message is to express this chimeric antigen receptor, which is like basically a plug and play molecule that comes to your immune cells that guides immune cells to destroy the cancer cell that is supposed to die.
Crazy.
Yeah, it is cool.
When you call the cancer smart,
it's just for fun.
But I have heard that before. that the reason why it's so hard to find a general cure against cancer is that it avoids whatever we throw at it. What is that? Is there consciousness, or is there just like
no, of course not.
Evolutionary adaptations? How is the cancer smart?
I mean, cancer. It's basically a cell that has accumulated many mutations and basically just want to survive. It's like basically the evolution of the cell at some point. We can go to the philosophical pathways about this, but it's basically cancer. It's a broad definition for all these malignancies.
Right.
But each subtype of cancer is a disease by itself. So that's why there will never be a universal cure for cancer. Never.
Right.
So many cancers are quite curable. Like some subtypes of leukemia, no one dies. Some solid tumors, when you have the diagnosis done in a good time in the development, if it's quite early, your chances of being cured is huge. It's not a death sentence anymore for the majority of cancers. But of course, the cancers, they always find a way.
Yeah.
So they tweak the immune system, or if you use a drug that blocks a specific pathway, let's say that this cancer is eating too much sugar to grow, then you can block the ability of the cancer to eat sugar, right? Or you can induce mutations in the DNA of the cancer to induce the cancer to die. But then, of course, if you are not good enough to do that in all cancer cells, some of them will, over time, to acquire more mutations, more just random. It's completely random. It's not something.
I guess because it happens so fast.
It happens really fast.
It can adapt to, or not necessarily adapt, but if we're hitting it with a medicine, for instance, and it replicates so fast, then obviously those that are not affected by the medicine are going to remain.
Yes.
Is that the thing, that it's just so fast?
That's the thing. It's quite fast. And there's a big wave of medicines coming, not just immunotherapy, but chemicals. Antibody drug conjugates, which is another way of targeting cancer cells. It's a lot of high technology coming to that space in order to try to basically cure cancer. But I mean, in the field, everyone is quite optimistic, and like for the next 50 years, cancer will always exist. But in the future, it's going to be like getting a flu.
Oh, wow.
It's like, oh yeah, I got a flu like 2 months ago. Oh yeah, I had cancer like 3 years ago.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, now I got a second one. Yeah, okay, I have to do the chemo again. Shit.
Yeah. Man,
that's the goal, because curing is going to be impossible. It's part of our life. It's part of our biology.
It's also impossible to cure the common cold.
Yeah, exactly.
Like because the viruses we don't get rid of it. It keeps going, and every year we're gonna have a version of it.
Some people are unlucky; they're more prone to have cancer mutations because of the genetics, habits in your life. If you smoke, if you drink too much, if you are obese and have other stuff. But overall, things are
going
to improve.
I'm looking forward to that kind of future. That sounds great.
It's going to take a while, but it's coming. Yeah.
I caught cancer, but I got my treatment. I'll be good in a week.
Oh, I got the second one. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. I have to do this again. Shit. Yeah.
That is very interesting. I never thought of it that way, but there are similarities to catching a cold. If we get to that treatment level, because like you said, it keeps evolving. Whatever you throw at it, and we just got to find something that's quick enough, efficient enough.
Yeah.
Wow,
it's coming.
But the common cold is like a virus that you can spread to someone else. What is the reason that cancer even begins at the first place? Because obviously you're not catching cancer from someone else.
No.
So why does it exist at all?
Only if the cancer is induced by virus, for example, HPV. Because some cancers are really associated with viral infection.
Yeah.
So like the majority of HPV cases, if not all of them, is associated with, cervical cancer is associated with HPV infection. Okay. That's why the vaccine was a big change in the development of the cancer. So basically, especially in women, if you're vaccinated, your chances of getting the cervical cancer is really, really low because you don't get infected by HPV.
Right.
So that's very good. But I mean, cancer, it is complicated because it basically depends on your cells and how they are growing. And like if you have a specific genetic background, most likely you have higher chances because you don't have a expression of a given gene that you're supposed to have to boost your immune system against cancer, or have a mutation or a downregulation in the expression of the genes itself, because it's not a matter of having the gene, but the gene being functional and making proteins and making stuff. So it is very complex. It's something that everyone wants to understand, like of course, where is the original scene, where everything starts.
Yeah.
What we know is that all our cells are having mutations every single day.
Right.
Every single day there are millions of mutations happening on you right now, on me right now, but we have fine-tuning mechanisms. So we have a machinery inside every cell that they can see that something went wrong.
Right.
And then it says to the cell, buddy, time to die.
Eliminate it. Yeah.
Doom. If the cell doesn't die, then the immune system can come and kill the cell.
Right.
And then sometimes
so this first what would you call it? Detection system is not part of the immune system. That's part of the cell's something.
Yeah, it's the cell own machinery.
Okay.
To avoid malignant transformation.
And then if that does not succeed, it calls on the immune system.
The immune system is like, hey buddy, I watch you. Yeah. And it goes and does the dirty job.
Man.
But then of course the tumor accumulates more and more and more mutations. And imagine this normally you have cancer when you're old, right? Of course, childhood cancer exists. It's very sad. But normally you have that when you're old, above 60.
Right. When our system is not strong enough to...
It's like you have accumulated a lot of mutations. Yeah. Some of them are just there, but they are building up for something else. New ones are coming all the time, and they just build up. And then our immune system, unfortunately, decreases over time.
Yeah.
And then you have the worst of both worlds. You have more mutations accumulating, and you have... not so strong immune system.
Yeah.
And then they have cancer, unfortunately.
Healthy habits, I assume, help.
This is the classic thing that we hear all the time. Always, if you have any, suspicious or something, if you have cases in your family, like my dad passed away because of prostate cancer. So I am on the screening. When the time comes and I'm in super high risk, so that's going to be for the rest of my life. So I have a higher chance than other people. That's the genetic background. But it doesn't mean that other people don't have it. So it's important to always, do what we have to do, because of men or males, prostate, females, breast, and cervical cancers, and also a healthy life. I mean, we are in a wine cellar here.
Yes.
Drinking is good, but don't drink too much.
Yeah.
Do physical exercises. Just have a good health, in general, by doing good things, eating good food and having friends and laughing. This is all good for you, right?
Yeah, of course. Even being predisposed, having the genetics does not necessarily mean you have to get it.
No, it doesn't.
So healthy habits are always a good idea, whichever
Whichever camp you're
in.
That's why I came cycling.
Yeah, very impressive. So I'm always fascinated by this stuff because it's, to me, human beings are just fascinating. And that we are able to understand stuff that's on a microscopic level to that degree that we can engineer a virus to do our dirty work for us. I mean, it's science fiction stuff. It's absolutely insane. And at the same time, we're also like investigating what happened the first second after the Big Bang.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're such an incredible animal. About like in the sense of what we are capable of. And I love that. That's one of the things that really like gives me so much joy in life, that I can't do any of this stuff, obviously, but I can talk to people who know how to do it. And it's like, we do this as a species.
No, it is exciting times because I mean, technologies are advancing so fast, and there's a lot of cool things that you can do. Basically, nowadays, we can, like we said, with CRISPR technology, you can plug and play with different genes, you can delete stuff, add new stuff as you want, basically. Of course, everything follows a regulatory pathway. Things should be safe and done in a very specific way. That's why things comes with time. That's why we don't have people being treated with these cool technologies right now, because it needs to be proven that it's safe. Before we know that if it works or not, it should be safe. Because it's going to be used to treat our relatives, your kid, your mom, someone close to you, and you don't want this person to die because of the safety, like we're going to discuss about the vaccine.
Exactly.
If the safety study was not done properly. That's why those things, they take time. But it's coming. It's coming.
That's so cool. That is a great segue, because mRNA technology is one of these groundbreaking,
Nobel Prize,
super cool technologies. So the Pfizer vaccine that we're going to talk about is an mRNA vaccine, and the traditional vaccines are like, vaccines have been around obviously for decades and are
centuries.
And are one of the coolest like medical inventions we've ever made, because it's like the earliest version of using the body's immune system in a way that we devise. So traditional vaccines, you would take a pathogen, either inactivated or dead or weakened or whatever,
or pieces of it,
inject into your body, and then the immune system reacts to that.
Going to be trained
and is trained, and from that moment on, whenever you encounter that disease, your immune system is already prepared. And that's the traditional way. The mRNA vaccines, they use this mRNA technology where instead of, I'm saying this to see if I understand everything correctly. Then you can correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm mistaken in something. So the mRNA vaccines, they sent a messenger RNA, which is like half a DNA spiral, into little nanolipid or lipid nanoparticles. Into the body. So the lipid nanoparticles are so that it can go through the cell barrier into the cell and use the cell's own factory to produce whatever you want it to produce, whatever is in that messenger RNA sequence. And in the Pfizer vaccine case, that would be the spike protein that is found on the COVID virus. So your own cells would produce the spike protein, and then your immune system reacts to this spike protein and is then prepared for encounters with spike protein in the future. That's the idea behind the mRNA vaccines.
And you know it well.
Well, thanks. I'm the kind of person like. I don't like taking medicines.
Same. I'm a pharmacist. But my dad always told me, take this medicine. I'm going to recover. So I'm not a...
I'm the same.
Only if I have to.
If I don't have to, I'm not going to take it. And if I have to, I want to read up on it. Like, what is this? What are the side effects? What can I expect?
That's good.
That's kind of where I come from. So when the pandemic started, and especially when the vaccine started showing up, and I was being told like everyone needs to take this, I started reading up on it, because I'm not a fan of injections. I don't think anyone is. So sure, if I have to do this, at least I want to know what is this and what does it mean and what does it do to me. So that's where I found this. That's when I found this definition of what an mRNA vaccine actually is, and I realized, this is very different. Like, this is not just the traditional vaccine where you inject something, your body reacts to it, and then you're immunized. Immunized, is that the word?
Immunized.
Thank you. Against the disease. This is something different, and I started reading into it more, and I started following it. And of course, it's a very controversial topic. There's people who are,
pro-vax, anti-vax.
Pro-vax, anti-vax. There's people who don't believe anything that comes from the pharma companies. There's people who believe everything that comes from the pharma companies. I've always just been neutral. I'm not against any side. Yeah. I just want to know what do you want me to put in my body?
That's good. You're a scientist inside.
Yeah, I think so. From the natural scientists for sure. So that has been my methodology. But I have been called an anti-vaxxer because I question the safety of the mRNA vaccines. But I always thought it was reasonable. It's a completely new platform. It hasn't been tested for very long. And we should probably test it to make sure that it doesn't have any unintended
side effects.
People call people different things.
Whatever,
so I always found it funny because I'm like we were talking about earlier. Like I think vaccines themselves are like the coolest thing we've ever made. Like one of the most important medical discoveries. But if you question like a new vaccine, what is this or is it completely safe? Then you get called anti-vax. So it's silly, but it is what it is.
It is what it is. Yeah.
But you and I only met once in the past when I handed over the book to you, and I deliberately did not ask you about your views on anything. I just wanted to reach out to someone who knows the field, can read the book, and tell me about it. So before we get to the book itself and your views on that, like. What were your views during the pandemic and in the years since of like I don't know the stuff that was going on with the vaccines and all of that? So like where were you during the pandemic? What did you think of the whole situation?
Yeah. So during the pandemic, I was already in Stockholm doing postdoc and working with people that were virologists, people that were immunologists as well, people with deep knowledge about coronaviruses, not just SARS-CoV-2, but SARS-CoV-1, MERS, and other coronaviruses. And everyone was very excited to see how fast we could make a vaccine.
Yeah.
And that the cool thing was that it didn't happen by chance. That happened because mRNA vaccines were already under development for a long time, for basically decades. So the Nobel Prize in Medicine, awarded by Karolinska, just here in the corner, was awarded to the two key scientists that was working for this development for the decades.
Yeah,
Katalin Karikó, I don't know how to pronounce her name. I hope it is correct. And Drew Weissman. And basically they have been studying mRNAs for many, many years. And then they could see that if you do some specific changes in any given mRNA sequence, you can make it less immunogenic. It's still good to deliver a message.
What does that mean, less immunogenic?
Because normally genetic material like a free DNA or free RNA, it's sensed by the immune system as something dangerous. Then you activate the immune system. You have an inflammation.
Okay.
So
that would be something that's less immunogenic. It doesn't create an immune response. It just gets destroyed. Is that what I?
What do you mean?
If something is injected that is, I'm trying to figure out what does it mean to be immunogenic.
To be immunogenic, something that activates the immune system, that triggers an immune reaction.
Okay.
So if you have just free DNA or free RNA, that's immunogenic. That activates your immune system.
Okay.
Then you get an inflammation.
Got it.
And then when they were studying the RNAs in many ways, not just the messenger, but other types of RNAs, they could see that if you do some specific changes in this little building box that makes the RNA an RNA, you can make it less immunogenic. So you can deliver a message because it's a messenger RNA. So you can say to the cell, make A, make B, make C, but you don't explode the cell. You don't drive inflammation.
Right.
So it was very good to see that we could easily take that knowledge that already existed into creating a platform. So Pfizer was in touch with BioNTech. BioNTech was already developing mRNA vaccines for influenza, for example, for CMV, for many other infections. Because instead of, like you said, instead of making a virus, killing it or attenuating this virus or taking little pieces, you can basically just know what is the part of the virus that is important to drive immunity, to be immunogenic, and then you can put that in your mRNA sequence, and then your body is going to make that. So it's super easy because it's just basically a sequence of letters.
Right.
So it is super easy to make as compared to the more classical vaccines. Because if you want to attenuate the SARS-CoV, how do you do it? How long is it going to take? What is the method? How protective it is? Normally attenuated vaccines, because there were some attenuated vaccines that were used.
What does attenuated mean?
Attenuated means that you take the virus that could infect you, and then you use radiation, use chemicals. There are many platforms to do it, and then you make it to be less aggressive.
Right.
In a way
to weaken
that that's
Before
the best, the better name. Yeah. To weaken it, then it cannot infect you.
Right. Okay.
But the safety profile is different. You cannot use this type of vaccine in pregnant women. You cannot use that in infants. You cannot you cannot use that in immune suppressed people, like if you have HIV, if you have some subtypes of autoimmune diseases. It is not recommended. So the safety profile is very different.
Got it.
Yeah. And so BioNTech was already working on that, and then they knew already by using the lipid nanoparticles, the messenger RNA in many formats, in vivo, and like in mice models, and also in humans, that it was insanely safe. So when the pandemic started, they sequenced the genome of the virus very fast. So it started late 2019, and like November, December, it was the first reports. And then the full genetic sequence of the virus was already published in January 2020.
Right.
And then all those guys working with this kind of vaccine platforms could basically have a look at it and see how similar this virus is to the other coronaviruses. Because coronavirus is a family.
Right.
It basically means that when you look at the virus under the microscope, you have this crown, or corona in Spanish. So you have these...
the spikes.
The spikes, exactly. And then they could see how similar it was. And then they knew already that the mRNA technology was safe. They knew that the lipid nanoparticles were safe. They knew by studying SARS-CoV-1, by studying MERS, which is another coronavirus infection, that the spike protein was the key driver of the infection, because it's the part of the virus that binds to your lung cells and infects your lung cells and then multiply and then destroy your cells. And then they knew that if you could block it, you don't have the infection. And they also knew that if you could create an immune system against it, you not just block the infection, but then you don't have a severe disease. Everything aligned, because they knew, for example, that to improve the stability of the protein to be expressed inside the cell, because it's not just to use the mRNA, it's about to use the correct sequence of the mRNA. Sometimes the protein is not stable enough when it's inside the cell, because maybe the cell's going to die.
Right.
So that the cell doesn't have the time to process all this information and present to the immune system, then train the immune system. So they knew that they had to make some specific changes in these areas of the spike protein to improve the persistence of the spike protein. So everything was already in place. That was a lucky shot, buddy.
Yeah.
That was a lucky shot. And because of that, the development was quite fast.
Right.
Then when I was like in KI, like having beers, because in Stockholm, there was not like a lockdown, but sometimes it had some afterworks, and like then I was talking to the people, and everyone was really excited to see that happen. Yeah, so that's where I was.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, talking to some smart people.
Nice.
About this.
Was there any doubts in the excitement? Were there voices saying, "Hey, this is really fast"? Are we actually sure that this application of these technologies, that sure they have existed in the past, but when we put them all together with the new genome, can we know for sure that this is all safe? Were the voices like that, or was everyone just excited that here's a solution?
The good thing with scientists that everyone is always skeptical. Of course, you're always excited about things, but everyone is very skeptical, because you should only trust in the data, and everything in science is just about how you view the data, generate the data. Everything is data-driven. You have a hypothesis, you collect the data, then based on what you have, you draw your conclusions, you design a next experiment, and so on and so forth. So everyone wanted to see the data, right?
Yeah.
And then all the data from the animal studies, super safe. There was absolutely no problem. That's one of the parts of the book that was very biased, to try to guide the reader into a point that the animal tests were not done correctly, or they were skipped, or that animals died and then it was not reported. That's not true. That's absolutely not true. So all the animal study was done, because when you are developing a drug, you need to follow a rite of passage. So you need to do a preclinical study. Then you see if it works or not, if it's safe or not. If you treat 20 mice and one mice die, that's a big no.
Yeah.
Because normally mice, they don't die if you inject stuff on them. And then you try to understand what are the possible mechanisms. If you generate the antibody responses, or the B cells or the T cell responses in the mice, you see if you have any side effects, you do biopsies, you check basically everything in the mice. So for example, to see if the lipid nanoparticles were safe and where do they go, right?
Yeah.
You can just basically make them to be red, you put in a mice, and then you see where it's red. Right? And then they could see that when you inject in a specific area, it stays mostly in the area. Of course, it goes a bit away, but it's basically insignificant. And it stays on you for like 2-3 days. It's not a long time. And then they could see that it's quite safe to use it. And then even if you put the mRNA inside, you don't have this big problem of having immune reactions that is going to induce you to have, I don't know, like an anaphylactic shock or something that is bad, autoimmune diseases. The mice data didn't show that. And then based on all this knowledge that they had already, they knew already how to make a good lipid nanoparticle. They knew how to make the mRNA vaccines. They knew what is the sequence of the virus they should do. They started to test in humans. And people, they were afraid because normally you have a phase 1 where you treat few dozens or hundreds of people, depending on the indication and the drug you have. And then the main goal is safety.
Right.
If it's not safe, it stops there. Period. You don't go to phase 2, 3, 4, etc. There is no point. But then in phase 1, if it's safe, you can already have some hints about what is the best dose. And that's what they did. So this is all open data, which is good because they got this data out.
Yeah.
They tried different dosages of the vaccine. So they tried 10 micrograms, 20, 30, 100. And then they could see that 10 was good, but not the best. 20 was even better, but not the best. 30, very good. 100, you have a bit more side effects that you want, and it's still the same protection as 30. So, okay, let's keep on 30. They could see in phase 1 that it was safe. You have immunity. So if you vaccinate the person, then you check for example, there's a lot of discussions about fertility in men, in women. So if you are a male and you're vaccinated, you do a sperm count before and after. They did that for everyone, phase 1, phase 2, and also phase 3. There is no difference for women as well. So they were accumulating data during this phase 1 by treating hundreds of people. I think it was around close to 200 people phase 1, which is a quite good number. But of course, there's a lot of people who that want to be vaccinated. It's a free shot. Why not?
Yeah.
Some people would say yes, some people would say no, right?
Yeah.
And then they could see that 30 was the best. Then in the phase 2, they were trying to confirm the findings of the phase 1 and then also see if the safety profile is still the same. And it's very important that this phase 1 to 3, it's really focused on safety.
Right.
Yeah. So basically there is a sponsor, in this case Pfizer. So Pfizer hires a principal investigator. It's someone that is doing the administration, is the medical responsible, let's put it this way, for this trial. And then you sponsor the trial, and then this PI needs to report any side effects to the sponsor, to the safety committee, and to the regulatory bodies. If it's in the US, the FDA. If it's in Brazil, it's Anvisa. If it's in the in Europe, it's EMA, and other, like in Swedish, there is also authority. And everyone checks this data. And then everyone needs to say, this is safe.
Right.
If someone says this is not safe,
right,
you stop there. So this is done for phase 1. But in case of the vaccine, because of all this knowledge, because they applied for emergency application, they had a fast track, they overlapped phase 1 and phase 2. So in the middle of phase 1, when they could see that it was very safe, and they could see that things were going well, the immunity was being generated, they could see that this is the best dose, they kicked off phase 2 in the middle of phase 1. And the people got worried. And it's totally fair, right? People get worried when you skip in the process, right?
It was literally called Project Warp Speed.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's like it was justified by the situation, right? Because if you consider people were dying, overloading the healthcare, that's the way to go, and have this cool technology that we could use. And then they kicked off phase 2. Then the phase 2, I think it was 4,000 or 5,000 people that they have treated. And then it is the same way. There's the sponsor, which is Pfizer. Then you have the safety board from the PI, the bodies, everyone checking the data and rechecking. And it's a huge amount of data. That like every side effect, of course, people are more interested in severe side effects or side effects of interest. For example, if you have a heart problem, if you have an autoimmune, if you have a miscarriage in case of pregnant women, then it's a big problem. And those cases are really, really rare. They could see in phase 1 and phase 2. Yeah. And they really investigated deep to see if there is an association with the vaccine. Because unfortunately, people, they have problems, right?
Of course.
So like you can have a heart attack at any time if you don't get a vaccine. You can have miscarriages, you can have cancer. And then the main goal is to see if the vaccine could cause that. And they really digged into that. I read the entire book. I checked all the reports. And there is nothing from Pfizer or FDA that make them to hide anything. They didn't hide anything at any moment. And then based on those data, they launched, which is the most important part of the trial, a phase 3 trial. Which is basically you treat a part of the population, the other part you don't. Then you compare side effects, you compare the incidence of infection, you compare deaths, everything basically.
That would be the big one with 43,000.
Exactly, that's the big one.
People, what do you call it? Subjects?
Yeah, subjects, patients, people. Yeah, I don't know how to name it. In this case, in my case, it's always patients, but subjects, I would say that's the best. And then everything's done again. All the safety studies is done again. Everything's evaluated. You should and you would follow the phase 1 and phase 2 subjects still to see if you have more long-term side effects. You never stop following them. And then you compare with your placebo-controlled group, which is people or subjects that didn't receive the vaccine. And then they could prove by scientific methods that this vaccine is amazing. Because it doesn't have side effects, of course. There is everything has medication has side effects, but the side effects are not that severe. When you have severe side effects, they're very rare. Myocarditis, all those things, it happened, but it's like 1, 2, 3 cases per million of patients, so it's really, really rare. And normally they were transient and easy to treat. With corticoids, with all the therapies, and therefore, because of the risk of getting COVID, was so poorly associated with a bad outcome. Like if you get corona infection, you can get COVID, and then you can end up in ICU, and then you can die, even if you have the person. But if you're vaccinated, even if you have this fast track, your chances of going to the ICU it's really low, and then they could see that is 95% effective compared to the placebo group. And then based on that, they approved the vaccine. And I think that people shouldn't be worried about that, to be honest, because all these bodies, because the phase 3 was a multi-center trial, was done in Brazil.
Multi-center.
It was a multi-center trial. So it was done in Brazil, where I come from, I think Australia, India, Israel, US, maybe some place in Europe as well. Then all these bodies, they had to check the side effects by themselves. Evaluate them. You have 24 hours to report by law. It's not like you can hide stuff. You can't hide stuff. And then then it's many eyes looking at it all the time.
A lot of people involved.
Phase 2, phase 2. That's why they hired like 20,000 people. It's not to like, the vaccine is so unsafe that we need to keep an eye on it. No, it's the other way around. We want to make sure that the vaccine is safe.
Of course.
If it's not safe, it will never be approved.
You mentioned something that I wanted to ask you about. The people who were in the phase 1 and phase 2 trial, you said we need to keep an eye on them, and of course, forever or like indefinitely. That is one of the questions. Like, for how long in a traditional vaccine test? For how long do you follow the subjects and follow the placebo group before you can actually say, well, it is safe as I understand, it can take a while, especially if there's something like myocarditis. Maybe you don't notice it right away, but then half a year, 2 years later, people have complications, and you're supposed to keep track of the placebo versus test group for a while. How long would
That's a good question.
Yeah, how long is it reasonable to keep track of people during a study? I
don't know the exact regulation, for example, from the FDA or EMA in Europe, how many months or years you need to follow them. But I would say it's a couple of years. Yeah, it's important to have in mind that vaccines, they have a very short act in your body. So you don't need to follow the patient for many, many years because it's not something that's going to stay with you. So if you have a side effect, it's going to kick off days, weeks, up to months after you get the shot. It's not common that you have a vaccine that causes you a side effect many, many years after. So a very classic side effect with a vaccine that was used in the early 2010s, I think 2009, 2010, there was a big spread of influenza H1N1. It's the seasonal flu shots that people receive. But of course, there's always some new mutations. They keep updating the vaccine every year, right? And then, of course, with new technologies, you change not the vaccine itself, but the excipients or the adjuvant. It's like the extra sauce you put in the vaccine.
That makes the immune system react.
Exactly. And then what they could see in that cohort of patients, it was mostly in Scandinavia, in Sweden, and I think in Finland as well. It's not Scandinavia, but like Finland as well. Right. They saw that there was an association, very rare cases, but real cases, of narcolepsy associated with the vaccine months after administration. So it was reported by, let's put, pharmacovigilance bodies, because all those data go to pharmacovigilance places where people always analyze this data. It's mandatory to have this, even when the product is approved. Like up to now, Pfizer has people looking around if there's any side effect, if there's an urge or like an outburst of specific diseases, an autoimmune disease or cancer because of the vaccine. They're still looking at it. So then they could see that and then they try to understand. Then they could see that for very unlucky people with a specific genetic background, so it's a specific type of HLA, it's one of the molecules of our immune system. If you have this HLA and you receive this vaccine from this batch with this excipient, you have a big chance of developing narcolepsy. Why? And that's the cool part. Because the part of the virus that they use to make this vaccine, when it was being presented by this molecule that this person have, this HLA molecule, could present parts of the virus that looks like ours, and especially from specific parts of the brain that controls your sleep and your awakeness, like how good you are at waking up and sleeping, stuff like that. So it's very, very specific.
Yeah, very, very unlucky.
But there's like that was found out.
Yeah.
Because you have ways of doing it. So there are pharmacovigilance bodies, there is watchers, people, they always report those things. So if there was today 13 billion people received, not people, 13 billion shots were given. And it's insanely safe. It is insanely safe.
We kind of jumped into it. I wanted to hear like where you were during the pandemic. You had, as I take it, you had no reason to be suspicious or think of anything.
No, but we really wanted to see the data. Every scientist. It's like, oh, is this good? It's like, okay, let's see the data. Show me that you can generate good antibodies. These antibodies work. Can you develop as well maybe T-cell responses? How good is that? How long is it? We could learn from this that the vaccine is not so good to protect against infections, right? Because even if you're vaccinated, you can still get infected.
Yeah.
But the vaccine was never designed to block infections. The vaccine was designed to avoid severe disease. So if you're vaccinated, you can still get infected, especially if these new mutations, Omicron, Delta, etc. You can still get infected, but your chances of going to the ICU or dying is insanely low.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that was not what was said in the beginning. In the beginning, it was advertised as the virus stops with you, and people all the way up to President Joe Biden. And the Pfizer CEO, Albert Bourla, was saying the same thing. If you get vaccinated, the virus stops with you. So that is one of those things that people that caused suspicion, let's say.
I totally understand.
When it was marketed as one thing and then later said, no, it was actually never meant to be that. It was then why
Yeah,
did
that
you
was
say it?
misinformation basically spread from the
exactly.
authorities themselves. Yeah.
Exactly, and that's very unfortunate. But
that was very unfortunate.
The reason I asked about how long you need to keep track of the different cohorts, the test subjects and in the placebo group, is with the phase 3 study, the big one, the Pfizer's phase 3 study, where they had about 22,000 people in the placebo group and the same amount in the test subject group. They, after about 3 months, decided that, all right, we've seen enough, this is safe, and they chose to start injecting the placebo group. Yes. So we don't actually have a long-term study because we don't have a placebo group. They injected the placebo group. I wrote it down. Everyone was fully dosed in this phase 3 trial by November 13th, 2020. And the project, the study was ended after 3 months, and they started injecting the placebo group March 1st, 2021. And pretty much everyone got injected.
But it was like 6 months then to follow up?
No. Everyone was fully dosed by November 13th, and then after 3 months, approximately 3 months, they said, "All right, we've seen enough," and they started calling in people, offering them the shots. So from March 1st, people started getting shots. Now, as a layman, when I hear that, I'm not very comforted by it. To me, it sounds like if you're testing something like this, like you said, maybe most effects happen in the first few weeks. Fine.
Nobody does, yeah.
But
it is known, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. But do we see?
Do we know it? Yeah.
No. It might happen the first few weeks, but I might still look like I'm fine. You know what I mean? If there's like a small tear in the vesicular system.
Yeah.
And I'm walking around and everything's fine. And then 8 months later, I'm doing some kind of physical activity or I get a viral infection and that kills me. Obviously, the damage was done the first few weeks, but if it's not noticed, I don't think these 22,000 people were all scanned on a cellular level to see if there's any tears anywhere. You know what I mean? That's why when I saw that they started injecting the placebo group already just a few months later, I was like, well, wait, how are we supposed to know?
No.
If half the placebo group or half the injected group dies before the people in the placebo group, but they do it 5 years later, or within the next 5 years, that would be a signal that, oh shit, maybe there's something wrong with this new medical treatment we're giving people. But now we don't know because we don't have a placebo group to test against.
Yeah, but I think it made sense to vaccinate them.
How so?
So it's because you still are following up the phase 1 and phase 2 subjects. So you have now a longer follow-up, and then you know what are the side effects and how long. What is the incidence of the side effects, how long it stays, and how you can manage that. And if you're not vaccinated, your chances of getting a bad disease is very high. So if you know that the vaccine is good,
sure,
why not to offer the placebo group? That would be like a scientifically or not like medically wrong, right? If you know it's safe.
I disagree with that because it's two different questions. One question is the vaccine safe? The other question is it safe enough for us to still give it to everyone because the virus is so scary? These are two different questions. I can absolutely agree, or if that is the choice people made, that well, the virus is going to kill us all. The vaccine maybe going to kill a few people but save everyone else. All right, cool. That's
the balance. Yeah.
That's one question, and that's a in a sense a moral or political question or whatever. But the scientific question of is the vaccine safe? That's a different matter. Like that's something that needs to be followed up. And if we don't have a placebo group to test against, we will never know, because everyone who gets any kind of issues moving forward, we don't have anything to test against. So
I got you. Yeah.
So why would it be correct to vaccinate everyone in the placebo group?
Yeah, I mean, by that time you already knew from the phase 1 and phase 2 studies that, and also all this pre-knowledge from SARS-CoV-1, MERS, animal models, etc., that it's safe and that it works. So I think it would be a bit unethical to don't offer them. So it's like, hey, we're going to vaccinate everyone,
but we
not
don't
you
know
guys.
because not enough time has passed.
There was like because vaccines are used for centuries, right? Like we have vaccines for a long time.
Sure,
of course, not in
sure.
this technology, which is I agree with you.
Yeah.
Then we know what is expected because the vaccines, they work in the same way, right? They stimulate your immune system.
Mm-hmm.
So your immune system have like this 2-3 weeks time that it's activated, then you create memory, and memory stays with you forever, or like not forever, maybe a long time. And then you know that like after 6 months, if nothing bad happened, it's not going to happen because what could happen? Because like the lipid nanoparticles, after you inject them, in a couple of days they're all gone. They're gone and they are not toxic at all. The mRNA is the same. So it's delivered. It's very unstable. That's why they.
How do we know that they're gone in a few days?
Because they did all the studies in mice.
Okay.
Yeah, and also in human, because you can track that by antibody levels, by the presence of the spike protein, by biopsies, by checking the presence in the blood. It is possible to do it by many techniques. And then they know that like the mRNA, because mRNA is really unstable, when they won the Nobel Prize because they could make it safer and also to make more stable in a way that you can deliver a signal or a message. Then it stays with you for a couple of days as well, but then it's gone, definitely gone, because the spike protein is being expressed, and then the spike protein stays with you from days to weeks. But then after those weeks, it's gone. Like there's nothing more.
But
because the immune system is going to destroy the spike protein, and the immune system is very good at doing that. So it's going to destroy all of it. Like there'll be basically nothing gone.
I still think,
and then like what can happen? You know?
That's my point. I still think these are two different questions because sure, all the injected components might be gone in a few days or weeks or whatever, but if it causes damage to somewhere in the body during those few weeks, but I don't show symptoms in the first 3 months, which was the study's length.
Yep.
But I do show them in 6 months or a year or 2 years. That is the scary part to me. Like these people that's part of being part of a scientific study. You agree that you might get placebo, and tough luck if you get the placebo.
Exactly.
You get the placebo, but it's for a higher purpose, for the scientific purpose.
Or you are lucky if the vaccine is really bad.
True. You got the true vaccine. Tough luck. Yeah. No, but that's kind of what you sign up for. That like, all right, we're going to follow you for whatever 10 years, and maybe you don't have any protection, but that's why we have to do the study, because we have to know for sure that it not half the people who were injected in 10 years with the actual vaccine don't drop dead for one reason or another. Yeah. So I agree with what you're saying. Like the body might clean everything up, but the damage is done. There might still be damage, and that's why we have to have long-term studies.
But they knew already from the mice studies and this preclinical development that was done that that's not the case, because after they treated the mice, and that's for SARS-CoV-1, for MERS, for all the coronaviruses, they have been studied for decades. So they know how the spike protein works for decades. It's not like the first time that they're doing this. They know exactly how it works. So if I treat mice or humans this way, the spike protein is going to be expressed in these dynamics. It's going to be this way. It's going to go to these places. It's going to be associated with these side effects. So that was known before. So if you treat mice and then you try to find a spike protein in the heart, you don't, because it doesn't go there. Or if you do, you find insignificant traces. Some people are unlucky. That's the point. These cases of myocarditis and other severe side effects, that's real. But it's like a 3-4 in a million. Like, how do we block people?
But how do we know that?
We know because they treated many people.
If we don't have a placebo group to test against, how do we know that only 1 in a million is affected?
It's because they
myocarditis doesn't necessarily show right away.
It does. It's quite short.
The effects of it don't necessarily show right away. Because, again, the damage might happen quickly, but you might be walking around thinking you're fine, and then a year later, you have symptoms. So,
but that's very rare.
Sure, it's rare, but how can we say... Fine. But rare might mean 1 in a million. Rare might mean 1 in a million. It might mean 1 in 100,000. I'm not arguing at all that the vaccine is dangerous. Like, that's not my position.
I got you.
My position is, how do we know that it's as safe as we're saying that it is? How do we know that 1 in a million gets myocarditis when we don't have a control group to test against? Like, they injected everyone after 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, we have biomarkers to follow that up. They are probably still following people until now, but many biomarkers of heart failure.
Sure, but everyone got injected.
Like a liver function. Yeah, but then you can still know. Like if there's any changes. I mean, of course, you don't have a group to compare, but it's because it was so safe and it was so effective that it's like it's weird to don't offer them the chance to get vaccinated. You know, it's like you know it's safe because from all these years of like decades of development with SARS-CoV-1, with MERS, with the RNA.
We didn't do mRNA vaccines for those though.
That's the point. Yes, not in humans. In a large scale, but like in animals, for like I don't know exactly what animals they were vaccinating, but they have been vaccinating animals for like many time.
But what I mean is we haven't injected people with mRNA vaccines,
not in this scale,
until the COVID pandemic.
They have done it in a smaller scale.
Sure, like minor trials.
Minor trials, but not in this like millions. And then of course, when you vaccinate millions, you always have unfortunate people that would react bad for many reasons.
Yeah.
But the risks that you have by getting COVID are so high to get a bad disease, and the benefit from the vaccine, when you put that in a weight, then it's like it's better to give everyone a shot. That would be unethical to don't give the placebo group a shot.
I disagree with that, but I
understand you, but it's
I do not envy the decision makers during the pandemic. I can say that much. Like the decisions that had to be made were difficult in either direction. Doesn't matter.
Yeah,
so
easy,
I have a lot of sympathy for everyone who was
working in the forefront.
A lot of sympathy, a lot of respect, not just for the scientists, but also the decision makers,
healthcare people
who had to weigh these risks against one another. Yeah. But I still think those are two separate questions. One is obviously, is it worth it? We think it's worth it. Let's do it. Fine. The other is, how do we know that it's safe and effective if we don't have a proper long-term study? And that's I just don't see how we can say that it's safe and effective.
Now we can 100% because like 13 billion doses, people being followed up for all these years. It is insanely safe. It is basically one of the most used drug ever in human history. But no other medication has been used in this range ever.
Yeah.
It's like basically not every people, most of people in all the continents, all genetic backgrounds, conditions, people are treated, and there is nothing that shows that it's not safe.
Sure, we can infer that we believe it's safe, but as a scientist, as a scientific approach, I would say we can't know. That's what studies are for, to have a placebo group to test against, and then. But that was
done, and then when the step, because again, all these steps, phase 1, 2, 3, they're like a different safety bodies that keep checking this data. That's why when this group tried to get the papers, they said, it's going to take many years. Why? Because they had infinite paper, and they have to redact things from the papers. It's because you don't want to bias by showing what are the physician treating people, the patient. You cannot tell. Like it's the GDPR, you need to have.
Of course. Patient data has to be redacted.
Maybe some.
But that doesn't take 55 years.
Information. So that's the point. FDA said they would release, I think, 500 pages or something per month or per day, and that would take 55 years.
Exactly.
And then that's where it came from. Actually, this number. It's like the amount of paper is so huge, and we don't have infinite people to put everyone working on this.
But they did approve the vaccines in a few months based on the same papers. So, either they didn't do a great job of reviewing them before, or they're not willing to do a great job of reviewing it after quickly enough. But that's kind of beside the point. I think there's that was, at least for me, that was one of the big things when I saw that they started injecting the placebo group. That caused me to kind of wonder, like, what's going on here?
But it's because like after phase 1, 2, and 3, you have so much data revised by so many people and everyone pointing up that this is safe and this is effective, that it doesn't justify. It's like, oh yeah, we need to follow up these people for, okay, we did 6 months and we use vaccines for centuries. We use mRNA vaccines for a while. We know everything about the
We didn't use mRNA vaccines.
Yeah, not in this scale.
There have been small studies, but we haven't used them. That's why.
Yeah, but even from those small studies,
proper long-term
like
study.
a phase 3, like you said, they vaccinate 20,000. How many people do you need to vaccinate then to have data?
No. The number of people was enough. It's that we eliminated stopped the study when we eliminated the placebo group. That's the issue. The study itself, great, 21,000 people in each leg. That's fine. But if we ended the study effectively by injecting the placebo group, then we don't have that data. We have 3 months of data and we say, all right, cool, that's enough. We've seen enough. Now it's unethical to not give everyone the vaccine. I disagree that it's unethical because I think that's what you sign up for when you do a study, because in the name of science, we want to know.
But it's not
for
mandatory to take it, right? They were offered rights to receive.
Of course.
Yeah.
But
I know many people that never took the vaccines.
Of course.
In Sweden, because they didn't want to.
But if they tell you, oh, this vaccine is so safe that we're going to stop the study now, 3 months in, do you want the vaccine? Of course, people are going to, well, yeah, if you're telling me it's that safe that we're ending the study,
but it's hundreds, actually a couple of thousands of people from across the globe checking the data. And everyone pointing and saying, this is safe.
Sure.
Again, and then you have to...
I'm not doubting the study itself or the data or the people who...
But the placebo,
Yes, that is my big issue because it's not a long-term study then. It's a 3-month study.
Yeah,
and that's not enough for a new injectable medical platform.
Yeah, but it is quite common in medical practice that when you are doing a phase 3 study where you can show that one of the arms is so much beneficial than the other ones, that you do a crossed arm. Especially in cancer, which is my area now of research, and also autoimmune diseases. So in many studies, for example, you compare a new therapy to conventional chemo.
Right.
And then you can see that they diverge quite strongly. So the people receiving chemo goes pretty bad. You still don't know what is the 100% safety of a drug. But you know
it's good enough in comparison.
You do enough to basically offer the other group that is basically going to go bad, to offer them a chance of survival.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what I have in mind. So they knew that it was safe and effective.
That makes sense when people are dying from cancer. For instance, that makes sense. Like if I have a very aggressive
COVID is not so.
That's the thing, and especially not for everyone. That was another thing that was strange with the vaccine. It was supposed to be given to everyone. When it's like if you have an autoimmune disease, if you're old, like the groups that are mostly harmed by COVID, it makes sense. Let's give it to everyone that's susceptible, and there's risk associated with it, but you're willing to take that chance. But when they started saying like everyone needs to take this, and also we haven't done any long-term studies,
people got a bit worried, right?
I mean, I didn't
because I know how those things work, and those things are so serious. There's like, if there was any chance of this showing any side effect that would come long term, or that it wasn't safe, this would never be approved. So I took all the shots. If they offer 5-10 extra, if the regulatory bodies, the medical team say it's safe and it's good, just go for it.
Have you heard of the opioid crisis?
Yeah, that's another podcast. That's a good one, man. That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's the issue. Like you say, it would never, and that's where I was during the pandemic.
Good point.
I was thinking, there's no way this vaccine is not safe. There's no way. Like I was completely in the camp of like, there's too many people involved. There's
too many eyes.
Too many eyes. Professionals, people that are proud in the work they do. There's way too many people involved for something to get through that is not safe. But if you know the history of the pharma companies, like these things have happened, both
bad stuff there,
both by accident.
For sure.
Medicines have gone through, gone all the way to market, and then later people realize, oh shit, this actually hurts or kills people, and they get withdrawn. Thanks. And sometimes even not by accident, like the opioid crisis, like the Sackler family that was behind the what's the company's name?
Yeah, I don't remember.
Doesn't matter. That did the opioids. Yeah. They knew there were internal emails saying, "Yeah, this is addictive, but we're going to market it as non-addictive because we want to make money. And then if we get sued, fine, we'll settle the lawsuit with a few $100 million." And that's the cost of doing business. Yeah. So we know that these things happen. Yeah. We know that these things happen in the medical industry. I think of the top 10, I don't remember, this was a few years ago, so I might get the stats right. But out of the top 10 biggest settlements in lawsuits, pharma companies in the US, pharma companies are like the top 8 or something like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Because this happens. And, you can say...
And it's a way to punish them as well.
Sure, and you can say that's they make so much good stuff, and sometimes bad stuff comes through. Fine, I'm not like making any moral judgments on any of this, but we know these things can happen. So therefore, before injecting everyone on the planet with something or suggesting we should inject everyone on the planet, I, as a consumer who knows the mistakes they have made before, wish that this is done properly, long-term study, and then people can decide if it's safe or not.
I mean, of course, in a regular development of a drug, you would have the preclinical development done in a specific way that was kind of done fast, building on the previous data from SARS-CoV-1, MERS, etc., and also their own data. Phase 1 would be completed, reported, and then apply for the second phase. Then you start to do it and so on and so forth. Yeah. Everything was overlapped because of the situation.
Yeah.
And one thing to have in mind is that scientists, they are very arrogant and they really want to know, they really want to be the first one to say something.
Yeah.
So if there was something bad coming up, we would know. Because some scientist somewhere, some medical doctor, someone in a lab would say, "Hey, I'm the first one to show that is not safe." Yeah, that's the biggest problem with the book. Because this lady says that it's not safe, but all the data shown, it's not true. It's very biased. It doesn't have the proper controls, or it's basically just not good science. It's like making a correlation and doing some association with the cause. But the first thing you know that correlation doesn't mean causation.
Of course.
Things are different. And like a very single and specific cohorts. Because, I mean, like we said, some severe side effects happen. It's very rare, like a couple of cases per million of injections. And then putting in a way, it's like, oh, this is so bad.
Yeah.
Because I've seen these 5 people, they died and they had myocarditis, but like 20 million people received and 5 had that. Shall we not vaccinate people? And there's a lot of data showing that it was very good for the people that received. They would not die of COVID. They will not go to the hospital. They will not have like severe disease because of the vaccine.
No, I do agree that the trade-off is a whole completely different matter. Like if I was in charge during the pandemic, I might have said exactly the same thing. Like we don't even need to wait for anything. Give everyone this vaccine and let's hope for the best. Like I completely get that there's a trade-off here. But yeah, we can get into that because the book talks a little bit about this phase 3 study that we have been talking about for a while now, the 43,000 people study, and the fact that it was ended after just a few months and everyone got the shot. You mentioned, before we go to the second document, you mentioned the 95%, that it was 95% effective, that this the study, the phase 3 trial showed that. And what it showed is that in the 2 different groups, so that would be about 22,000 people in each group. The group where people were injected with the shot, there were 8 people who got the COVID virus after that. 8 people got the virus after these 3 months, within these 3 months. which again is a crazy short span because as everyone who lived through the pandemic knows, maybe you got infected once, maybe your family member got infected, but you didn't, and then 6 months later you get it. So to say in
there's no rule,
to say in 3 months, like we're done looking at this is kind of crazy. But in the placebo group, 162 cases were observed of COVID-19. In the vaccinated group, 8%. 8 people, sorry. So 162 cases versus 8 cases. And if you divide 8 by 162, you get 95%. And that's what they said was the 95% protection. Now, I'm not an expert.
For infection, yeah.
I'm not an expert, but even that is kind of crazy because you're not comparing. Why would you compare infected cases in the two groups against one another? What you do is compare infected cases in the placebo group versus the amount of people in the placebo group, and infected cases in the vaccinated group versus the amount of people in the vaccinated group, which would give you an absolute risk reduction and not a relative risk reduction. So the 95%,
another way of looking at the data.
RRR versus ARR. The relative risk reduction is 95%, but the absolute risk reduction is 0.7%. And so even, I mean, all of these things add up to a bunch of like, this is strange. Why is there so many discrepancies that are quite easy to find? Like,
it's like this is just one part of the data, right?
Yeah.
So there is all the immunoassays that was done to show that if you get vaccinated, you have an effective immune response. The number of internations, ICU administrations, and deaths. That is not in this analysis that we're doing right now.
Yeah.
So when you take the big picture, so because the vaccine was not designed to block infection, it was like to avoid people to getting severe disease. When you check people, when you check people between or the subjects in these two arms, and when you see the placebo group, how many of them end up in ICU and deaths, etc., it's higher if you get infected as compared to the other arm.
Sure.
So that's another way. Of course, we can go through the paper and have a look at it. I don't remember it by heart.
No,
but there is like way more data that supports
exactly.
that supports the vaccine being good.
That is debatable, but there is a lot more data. I agree. This is why I bring this up is because it's interesting. Like you said, it was. Now we're saying it was never about stopping infection. But they still presented the 95 relative risk reduction, which is a measure for how many people are getting infected. So only 8 got infected, or 8 got infected in the vaccinated group, 162 in the placebo group. So you see, it stops infection at a 95% rate. That was what was said. That was what was marketed. And then when people started saying, "Well, everyone is getting sick even though they're vaccinated," oh no, actually we never.
But
tested
the good thing
that.
is that like people who got shot and got infected, they would not go to the ICU. They will not die. Some unlucky people want to, of course, they always do, unfortunately, because that's biology. But the majority of people not.
Sure. Then that's what they should have said.
Exactly.
And not
that's what would be the take-home message from that. Right?
But why I said it's debatable is because there were also, I think, 5 cases. Let me get this straight. In the 3 months that the trial was going on before they injected the placebo group, I think there were more total deaths in the vaccinated group, where there were, I think, 3 or 4 cases. These numbers might be incorrect, but I think it was 3 or 4 cases of people dying from different heart-related issues. Now, normally in a study when that happens, you would say, "Oh, this is a signal. We need to look at this."
They did, 100%.
Okay.
They did. Like hundreds of people did. They all checked, and everything was not associated with the vaccine. It is,
and we knew that in 3 months.
Yeah, because I mean, like I said, like the course of the drug stay in your body, the expression of the spike protein, how the mRNA stays with you, and the LNPs, we know how that goes and how the immune system reacts. So, yeah.
All right,
that's enough. I mean, to be honest, yeah.
No, that's why I brought you here. I don't see you as like.
I'm not biased to any side. I just trust on the data. So like, if the data was showing, this is unsafe, then I would say this is unsafe.
I don't see you as like representing one viewpoint and me representing another. I don't, which is why I really appreciate the conversation. Like I'm trying to make sense of something that to me looks strange, but I'm not an expert, and therefore obviously I'm going to bring up everything that looks strange.
No, please, that's the goal. And
yeah.
I have seen a lot of stuff in the book that Jesus Christ, they were completely weird. They create a lot of new acronyms that is not scientifically used.
Do they do it, or do the Pfizer documents do it?
No, they do it. Naomi and the other people that help to write. Yeah, some like a transfection associated encephalitis that doesn't exist. Lymphocyte amok. There is this syndrome that they call, I forgot now the acronym they use, but it's something like a Cox-Vax or Vax-Cox, something like that.
Right. No, I know what you're talking about.
They create some terms that when you look at like a...
so in the book...
That's so weird.
Yeah.
Why would you create that?
Yeah.
Because this doesn't exist.
It's the book is a collection of a bunch of different reports and also some articles by people who have looked at this data. So
some very good articles, by the way. Yeah. Some really bad, but some good.
So in some of the articles, people make up expressions for, say, injuries caused by the vaccine. Covax, something. That's where that comes from. I get what you're talking about. But the majority of the book is looking at the Pfizer documents and data, and then they're using their terminology to look at it. But yeah, there are some articles dispersed here and there, looking at the where people are writing in their style about these things. Another, I think we can move on from the study, the phase 3 trial. Another thing, a document that they look into that's a centerpiece of this book is the one called 536. Cumulative analysis of post-authorization adverse event reports. So that would be
cool name.
Yeah. So that would be like the major document that's looked at. And what that is once all of these trials were approved or wrapped up, let's say. Yeah. And the FDA said, "All right, cool, you can go ahead." They started marketing the vaccine or roll out the vaccine, and that started on December 1st, 2021. And from December 1st, 2021 to February 28th, 2022, Pfizer collected data from caregivers, from doctors, nurses.
That's the phase 4. Yeah.
I don't know. Is it called
phase 4? Yeah.
That's not a study. That's just gathering reports from.
It is still a study.
It's still considered a study.
Yeah, it's a phase 4 phase after market approval, because you really need to show it's called real life or real world study. Okay. Because phase 1, 2, and 3 is very controlled. Yeah. It's a clinical trial. You have insurances. You have everything in place, and you follow up people. They will come back to you. Yeah. Everyone knows like who to call. But like when you go to real world data, it's like my mom in Brazil going to take a shot like she did. Yeah. And then you go home. Then it's like. That's it. You don't need to call anyone or anything, only if you have a really severe stuff, which didn't happen. But yeah, it's a real world data. Right. So if something happened, they need to report to the sponsor, which is Pfizer, not to PI because there's no PI anymore, but to the pharmacovigilance bodies. Right. In Brazil, they still now. They are still
this is still reported,
at it,
of course.
So and that's for any drug that is approved.
Yes. Yeah. So this is data that they collected for this document called 536 is data collected from December 1st to February 28th. So 3 months.
3 months, yeah.
Approximately 126 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine were given out. Yeah,
that's amazing.
It's what could go wrong?
Good one.
And in this document, they reported, or they received reports from caregivers around the world, mainly from the US and the UK, but also other countries. 42,086 case reports containing 158,893 events. So a little over 42 cases and a little over almost 160,000 events. And an event is an adverse event, some kind of bad effect from the shot.
Yeah, fever, headache, fatigue, if you have a muscle pain or joint pain because of the injection with the needle.
So that would be the most common ones and the least serious ones. And then in the document, the Pfizer document, they had these adverse events of special interest. So they have
IASI, classic.
IASI, a handful of they call it system organ class, like each for different parts of the body, different parts of the system. So they had anaphylactic, cardiovascular, dermatological, hematological, and so on and so forth. So all of these reports from the 42,000 cases and 158,000 events, they would gather and put into these categories and write what happened, what was reported, what happened. And the reason, correct me if I'm wrong, but the reason of doing a phase 4 trial of this sense is, like you said, it's not controlled. So we don't know for sure, did the vaccine cause this or whatever. But if we find that there's a lot of, say, cardiovascular cases popping up, all right, then we yank it and let's have a closer look at this. That's what you normally would do.
Yeah, that's what they did.
Yes. So if let's say there's a few thousand cases of serious adverse events during these first 3 months. What would be the reasonable reaction? Like what should Pfizer and everyone else have done in that situation if there was a bunch of cases that were indicating serious harm?
It really depends on the adverse event, right? If it's some adverse event that is expected and has been observed in phase 1, 2, and 3, you know when it starts, how long it stays, how you treat it, and it's not severe. It doesn't do any damage to you or permanent damage, then that will be something to be investigated further if it's severe. But if it's just easy events, like I said, fatigue, headache, fever. I had a lot of fever after my second shot. It really put me down when I took the second one. But it's not something that is important,
right?
Because it's something that is expected. It's something that had been observed in the first 3 phases. And then the serious cases, anaphylactic, they know from the phase 1, 2, and 3 that it starts a few minutes after injection. Those are severely investigated, and there's a lot of data trying to explain why that happens, how you treat it when that happens. And then they could see that it's just few cases over 1 million. Like, 5 cases per million injections, something like that. And it's the same for myocarditis. What is quite interesting in the rollout, they could see that is the myocarditis, IASI, it's mostly associated with young men. And they cite a very interesting paper. It's actually one of the few good stuff that they cite there that I really took me to have a look at. It's a paper published in Science Immunology. It's a very respectable journal explaining how that happened. And then they showed that it's not an autoimmune reaction. It's just basically to have an over activation of the immune system.
Right.
And that happened. But what they don't say, and what is in the paper, but in the book, is that all those things are transient and easy to manage. So it's not something that's going to cause you permanent damage. You always have unlucky people that will receive the shot and later will have a serious adverse event that is going to be permanent.
Right. But
what the phase 1, 2, and 3 and this early rollout phase checkup shows that this is really, really rare. Just confirming further that the vaccine is more and more safe. So it really depends on the adverse effect that you have.
Okay. So if there is serious adverse events during these first 3 months, the responsible thing would be to stop giving people the vaccine and have a closer look.
Yeah.
Okay, so
it's important to have in mind that this was being checked by FDA, EMA, Anvisa, Israel, Australia, and everyone looking at this. So if this was something that wasn't safe, this would be taken off the market instantly. Because people know that it's my mom.
Like opioids.
that is another story. That's another podcast. But like, because people know there's like, this is being offered to my kids, this is being offered to my relatives. If me as a part of the safety committee, if I know this is unsafe and it could cause this harm, we would say it. Whistleblowers, they are everywhere. So there's no conspiracy theory behind that. And now, so what happens after market authorization is that if you start to see, that's for most of the drugs. I don't know the details for Pfizer's vaccine, but for most of the drugs, if you see a specific adverse events coming up from specific groups, like young males, older females, etc., you would change the indication of a drug to avoid that group. That is possible to be done after you have market approval.
Which now has been done. The CDC and the FDA are not recommending the vaccine to pregnant women any longer in the US.
Okay.
That was just a few months ago that was changed. And they also say that, yes, it can cause myocarditis. So now there's...
that's for sure. It's extremely rare. It's not permanent in most of cases. But it is, that's real. There is no drug that is perfect.
Of course. Yeah. So what I did is I went to this document 536 and read it myself. Like not even trusting Naomi Wolf or these people. Yes. so I downloaded the document. So this is Pfizer's own document, Pfizer's own numbers from these first 3 months, from December 1st, 2021 to February 28th, 2022. So they have anaphylactic events. That would be like choking, right? 2,962 relevant events. Of those, 2,341 were considered serious and 9 were fatal. Cardiovascular, so related to the heart, they had 1,441 events. 946 of those were considered serious. 136 of those were fatal. And then they had COVID-19 AESIs, they call it. So it's a group of COVID-19 complications, basically people who got severe COVID-19 after having the shot. So 3,359 events. Of those, 2,585 they consider serious, and 136 were fatal. And the list goes on and on. Is
this after just one dose or after 2 doses? Is this available?
This is...
because that's very important, because you need to get fully vaccinated.
I think that varies, because it's all the data collected from the first 3 months. So some people probably got complications right after the first dose. Some people maybe after 2 doses. It's 2 weeks between, right?
Or the person got the first shot, got infected, and these complications coming from the infection because you're not fully protected after the first shot. That
would be the COVID-19 AESIs. But the anaphylactic, the cardiovascular, all of that stuff is a different matter. There's many of them. Facial paralysis, 453 cases, 399 were considered serious. Hematological, so the blood, 1,080 events. Of those, 681 serious, 34 fatal, and so on and so forth. And pregnancy related was the most disturbing one. They had 270 mother cases. So 270 pregnant women who got the vaccine, and then various adverse events were reported. 23 spontaneous abortions, so the child dying in the stomach. 5 outcome pending, it says. 2 premature births with neonatal death. 2 spontaneous abortion with intrauterine death.
A lot of bad stuff.
1 spontaneous abortion with neonatal death. And I don't need to go through all of these, but for each of the groups, except for some of the less serious ones, which would be dermatological, hepatic, and musculoskeletal, for each of the groups, there are fatalities. There are people who died from their cardiovascular complications within just the first 3 months, and within just the data that was reported back during these first 3 months. So a lot of people could have just, died or had complications, but never went to...
We have very important things to have in mind.
Yes.
One is, because there is overwhelming data showing this if you go through the details, this doesn't hold true. Why? We don't know if the people were being vaccinated when infected, because you don't need to do a PCR test or a test to confirm that you don't have the infection. When
we didn't know if they were. Sorry, I didn't catch that. We didn't know if they were vaccinated while infected. Is that what you said?
Yeah, okay. Because if we know that all these side effects, it's associated with COVID infection as well. So it's important to know if the person that received this was infected or not, or if this person is fully vaccinated. So that's one way of looking at the data, which is not summarized here. And it is very important to understand, because you cannot take out a vaccine off the market just because of that. You need to understand, because the disease itself is really bad. So all the side effects are associated with the disease.
But hold on, didn't we just say that doing the phase 4 trial is meant to search for signals?
Yeah.
And if we have hundreds of people,
oh my God, investigated this like really deep.
But
because why is the vaccine not being the market?
If hundreds of people are dying because of this, isn't that a
But then you need
signal?
to show that it's dying from the vaccine, right?
Yes.
Because if you take one shot, you're not fully protected, then you get COVID, then you die.
Yes.
You die because of COVID, not because of the vaccine.
And how do you show that?
By analyzing the data, the demographics, interviews, blood tests, PCRs. There are like many ways of doing it. That's one way.
Maybe a study that's longer than 3 months.
Yeah, of course, but it's like.
But that's my point. Like if after we approve the vaccine, and then we do the phase 4 trial, and we see a bunch of people are dying that might be associated with it. I'm not saying it wasn't.
Yeah, it wasn't.
It's a signal that maybe we should look into this.
Now we know it wasn't as well.
How?
So. Because all this data have been scrutinized in many ways.
But how do we know it's not because of the vaccines?
Why? Because one way to compare, because people, they'll have miscarriages, people, they'll have all these problems anyway, right? People that have disease. So if you check the background level of like how many, for this cohort of people with this genetic, population, where is the incidence of these diseases, heart attacks, cancer, whatever. Let's say it's 3 per year per million. If I compare people that were vaccinated, same demographics, is it higher or lower? And all the overwhelming data we have after all this time, and also during this time, is that it's the same. So it's not caused by the vaccine, it's just because people have these problems. And then there are few cases that were 100% caused by the vaccine. And these cases, they were investigated, and there's a lot of reports trying to show how this happened. It's just like unlucky people exist, and they take an alvedone and they have a side effect.
Yeah,
but the majority of people don't. So when you look at the data in details, when you do the demographic evaluation in the larger population lookout, you can see that it's not above background. So this is something that would happen anyway. If you get the vaccine or not, you have this heart attack anyway. You have this miscarriage anyway. Right. That's why it was recommended during the pandemic to take the shots. Now they have changed because there's no pandemic, but it was recommended because getting the infection, it's worse for you and the fetus than actually the vaccine. Because the vaccine is very, very safe for pregnant women. Because they could see by really looking this into the data. I promise you, if there was something bad, people would find out, and this would be in the news. Some scientist somewhere will find the mechanism, how it worked. Like all some papers, they cite really good papers showing that this happened, is real. But then when you look at the data, it's really rare. So it doesn't justify taking out the vaccine from the market. This is worrying. I totally agree.
Yeah.
If you look just at the numbers, the numbers are overwhelming. And that's why I didn't like much the book on this side, because they only show one side.
Of course.
Yeah. Check the raw data. The raw data is at 47%. It's like, what?
Yeah.
But then when you look in details, it's like, but you didn't include all these controls, and you don't have all this data for you to compare. Because it's like people, they will have this disease anyway. Like this person is diabetic, this person is obese, had all these problems. This person will have heart attack anyway in 1 year. Then the person got a vaccine and then had a heart attack. It's like, is it a vaccine? Of course it's not the vaccine.
No, that's why we need a long-term study to know.
Exactly, and that's why the rollout phase is very important.
Yes.
And the rollout phase just confirmed the safety of phase 1-3. That's very important to highlight. It did.
I don't know, if we end the phase 3 trial within 3 months and vaccinate the placebo group and say, we know enough, it's safe, and then we roll it out, and the safety, the reports indicate that some people are dying, we don't know if it is the vaccine or not. To me, that's enough to say, okay, we need to investigate this further. We should do another phase 3 trial, perhaps, and follow it longer than just 3 months. It might end up being that, the vaccine is so overwhelmingly safe, fine.
Yeah,
but
the data showed that. That's why they didn't do it. Because if that was really necessary, all the regulatory bodies would require that. I
still can't agree to that, because if we only have 3 months of data, we cannot say the data show that it's safe. We don't know that. No one knows, because there's no placebo trial, long-term placebo trial that we can
they knew, because with. The follow-up, the way how it was designed, was good enough for a vaccine development and building up all the knowledge they had before of 3 months.
But follow-up of 3 months is still 3 months.
Yeah, but it's like you still follow up the people that received vaccines phase 1, 2, and these early people that received the vaccines, like 6 months before, they still being followed up for 6 months. So they knew that it was safe. They knew that they were, and right now, for example,
are you talking about the phase 1 and 2 trials?
Yeah, the phase 1 and 2.
So that would be like 2,600 people.
Yeah, they were still being followed up for many months.
Yeah.
So they knew at the end of the phase 3, by checking phase 1 data, phase 2 data.
So
phase 3 is only 3 months. So phase 1 and 2 is a bit longer, right? So
yes.
They have all this data. Let's say 6 months.
A few months longer, yes.
6 in the middle of a pandemic. Like you have 6 months data saying this is insanely safe.
I do not disagree with that part.
We have to approve that, no?
No. I do not disagree with that part, that during the pandemic we landed on saying this is good enough. Fine. I completely concede that point. Like I said, I might have said the same thing if I was a decision maker during that time. What I don't concede is that we can say it is safe. My standpoint is we don't know that it's. I'm very.
By that time, now we do know.
No, even now, because we don't have a long-term trial against a placebo group. We don't have it.
We don't need to have a placebo group anymore, because we have so many people treated already. And then you check the safety on the people that have been vaccinated.
But if we vaccinate 1 billion people, and
we did,
sure, and 10 million have some kind of complication at some point in the future.
All these cases are investigated.
I can't believe that they are, but
let's
say
it's mandatory by law that all these reports are sent. No. What
I'm saying is, if 1 billion people are vaccinated and 10 million have any kind of complication, like in 5 years their heart stops because they got damaged by myocarditis because they got damaged by the vaccine. No one is going to report that as a vaccine-related death.
Because it can't be.
It can't be. That sounds very definitive. How do you know it can't be?
No, it's because what we know from the vaccine, from all these years, from all the preclinical development in the mice, we know that's like the spike doesn't go to the heart, it doesn't stay there, so it can't be because of the vaccine. Like, it can't be. Because, it stays in your body for a while, it trains your immune system, and then it just goes away. When we are babies, we receive a lot of vaccines, right? And it's like, there is nothing. Imagine, for how long do we need to follow up people? They were newborns, and then you vaccinate them. Because we know from all this time that is insanely safe. And the
traditional vaccines,
the side effects,
yes,
they come in a very short frame. For example, these narcoleptic events that I said, it came in the first months. Why? Because the immune system are activated, and they find a way to go to the areas in the brain, and they did what they did.
Right.
So we can expect the same for any other vaccine, because it plays with the immune system. The immune system is going to expand, and then it's going to decrease and generate memory. If in this expansion nothing bad happened, it's like, why in the future would it happen? I agree. People, they were very cautious about it, and that's very important. To be honest, it's something that is you are going to receive, you're going to give to your kids, to your relatives, people that you love. It should be safe.
The thing is, if a virus hurts you, it's like, all right, it's a virus. It's trying to hurt me. And everyone understands that. If a virus hurts me, that's its job. If a medical device hurts you, that's a completely different thing. It's not meant to happen. Of course it happens. And
it will always happen,
with all medical interventions, there's always the risk.
Like small.
But if there's this study that says the risk of getting myocarditis is 7 times higher from the virus than the vaccine.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's like, great, that's true. Great.
Same for miscarriages and all the problems.
Sure. But if I told you that for every 7 people who are hurt by the virus, 1 person will get hurt by the vaccine. Are those good odds?
But
if any other medicine worked like that, all right.
But it's also the
say,
severity. The severity from the virus is huge.
Well,
from the vaccine,
myocarditis is always dangerers.
It's never fun, but to have different levels.
But let's take cell. What do you call it? Chemo. Actually, that's not a great example because chemo is dangerous. Let's take something lighter. Headaches, and you take paracetamol, Alvedon.
Alvedon, classic.
For every 7 people who take an Alvedon, who got a headache from whatever, something else, 1 will get a more severe headache from taking the Alvedon. 1 in 7. We will look at that and go, come on, guys, we can do better than that. 1 in 7 should not be hurt by an Alvedon when they're trying to cure their headache. That is what we're doing with the vaccine, where this study had 55 million. The study was conducted on 55 million people, so it's a very robust study, and it says the virus is 7 times more likely to cause myocarditis than the vaccine. But that also, if you flip it around, says the vaccine is 1 in 7 as likely to get you myocarditis as the virus is, which to me is insanely high. Like, I would never sit in a car
the incidence is very low.
If they told me every 7 times this car's brakes might not work. Like, hold on, we need to look into this car a little bit more.
Myocarditis is just one of the symptoms and problems you can have with the infection, right? You have like all the lung problems and like a long-term COVID, which is a big thing now. Because you can get like this long-term effect from infection. So if you build up all of this, you have an overwhelming benefit in the vaccine compared to the infection.
All I'm saying is it's a different thing to be hurt by a virus than it is to be hurt by a medical device. We don't want to be hurt by our doctors and because we're taking.
That's why you have all the preclinical development in animals, phase 1, 2, 3, and 4, to show that it's safe. And this would not go to market if it's not safe. Trust me. I promise you.
Opioids.
Opioids.
But
that's another podcast.
Yes, it is. But I struggle with calling them safe because there is not enough data. I would say there's not enough comparison.
I think the data in safety is overwhelming. It's 13 billion shots.
Yes.
And
but
from
again,
the 13 billion shots,
we don't know.
We know the incidence of. Because there are some side effects that are not related from the vaccine, for example, some of these. But we know that some cases, yes. Like an infant having a heart attack. How many do per year? Oh, 1?
No, of course.
In 100 million. Okay, but we have 10. 10 times more. Oh, then that's the vaccine. Then you have the incidence, and then you know how to treat. Then it is important to know how to treat. And then what is known is that those side effects, they exist. They're all mapped. We know the incidence, which is very low. It's like a couple, I think it's 5 per million shots. So that's basically really rare. And they're all transient, treatable, and non-permanent.
I would still say we can't know because people, of these 13 billion shots, maybe 500, maybe 10 million are going to get complications at some point in their life. Not necessarily right away.
But it can't be from the vaccine because
But of course it can. Be. Like we said, if the cardiovascular system is injured, very, very slight
But then you
tear,
have symptoms.
Not necessarily. You don't have to right away, fall over and faint. Like you can have a little tear and it's fine, and then you keep working out and it's fine, but it gets worse, and suddenly it tears, and you die or have some serious injury in a year. It's not, and we're talking about.
As a scientist, I only believe and trust in the data, and the data shows that if you have these kind of side effects, it comes very early because it's associated with the immune system. And then when the immune system is calmed down after it has done the job, which is to clear the spike protein, then nothing's going to happen. Because we know vaccines for centuries. And it's like you don't have long-term effects from vaccines.
But vaccines and mRNA vaccines are two different things. But
mRNA vaccines are really good.
I think it's one of the most.
That's the proof.
I think it's one of the most amazing things we've ever thought of.
They won a Nobel Prize, for God's sake.
I am not at all opposed to like the idea.
I know.
It's such an amazing invention, and I think it can be used for so many things.
It's coming for cancer treatment, not just for infections.
Absolutely. What I'm concerned with is make sure it's safe before giving it to everyone. But such a case is possible that you get a small tear in like a vascular, what do you call them, in your vascular system, and you seem fine, but then you keep working out, and in a year you have issues. That's possible, right?
I mean, when it comes to biology, everything is possible.
So
everything's possible. This is really unlikely to happen. The evidence we have so far, that this is extremely rare if exists.
Sure.
Because that will happen in the early phases after being vaccinated.
Sure. And
biology is biology.
Like I said, rare could be for 13 billion doses, or let's say 5 billion people that got the vaccine. I don't know if that's true, but let's just say for 5 billion people, rare could be 20, or it could be 100 million. Because 100 million is also rare when you talk about 5 billion people.
No, that's a lot.
Good, I agree.
That's a lot,
But
there'll be no vaccine approved with that rate of.
And good. What I'm saying is, there, with billions of doses handed out, with billions of people having it, there might be a lot of people who are hurt in some minor way, but it doesn't show up as a vaccine injury. They might not even die. Like we're talking about myocarditis and people falling dead. That's an extreme case. But some people just might. There's cases of athletes who just are never able to go back to doing their sport because they got hurt by the vaccine. It caused some damage, and now they can't be athletes anymore.
That's very unlikely. That's very unlikely.
Fine.
Yeah.
I mean, I concede all of these things. I'm not saying any of this is common or likely or anything, but there are cases. There are people who this has happened to, and the only way that we can know that it is unlikely is to have a proper long-term study. We can all say this is unlikely, or this is very likely, or it's safe, it's not safe. We can all say these things,
but have to decide on how long should be, right?
Yes.
And then for a vaccine, because we know how is the distribution of the LNPs, mRNA, the spike, etc., and how the immune system acts, it's like it is acceptable 6 months. So that's a good follow-up for an approval. But after that, you keep following up people like we do right now. So this phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 subjects, they are being followed up until now.
Phase 3 are not, because they got the vaccine.
No, they're vaccinated
there's
people.
no placebo group.
Yeah, they're vaccinated placebo group, which was good to have vaccinated them.
Not good for science.
It's better than getting infected.
It's not good for science. No, it's not good for...
The data is overwhelming on the safety and efficacy.
We can't say that.
We do. We can't say that.
There's no study. But Anthony Fauci, you know of.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Head of the, what is it called?
CDC?
No, NIH, not NIH, NIAID. National Institute of Allergies and the
CDC is checking the safety and the distribution of COVID and the safety of vaccine.
When he was trying to, when they were working on an HIV vaccine, they asked him when is it coming, what's going on, and he said a good vaccine you have to study it for at least 10 years to know for sure that it does not cause any damage in people after multiple years. And to me, that sounds reasonable. At least a few years and not 3 months.
But this vaccine was studied for a long time.
Not this particular makeup. The mRNA was studied and nanolipids were studied. Lipid nano.
LNPs, yeah.
But that combined with the COVID genome was not studied until warp speed started.
No, it was. It was for SARS-CoV-1 and for MERS, which is part of the coronaviruses.
Yes.
And they know from that study...
But this particular combination was not studied because we didn't have the COVID genome until 2020.
Yeah, so not SARS-CoV-2, which is like a small difference from SARS-CoV-1 and a bit different from MERS, but it's still in the same family. So the data from that time showed already that the LNPs were safe. Then you do need to waste 5 years studying LNPs to find where is the best combination of compounds, because LNPs are complex. You have a bit of cholesterol here, you have some cationic molecules here and there, a lot of stuff in there. PEG or PEG, the big stability. You don't have to study the mRNA itself because people won the Nobel Prize because of that. They were studying that for decades. You don't need to study much of the MERS or MERS and SARS-CoV-1 because that has been studied for a long time. People who are already developing mRNA vaccines for that. They've been using, I think it's in herd, like in cattle, for like immunity of animals to avoid the infection among them. I don't know the details, to be honest with you.
I haven't heard of this.
But I know that the vaccines have been tested in
mRNA vaccines.
Yeah, exactly, in animals and in few humans. So that speed up all the process. Because like if you are developing a vaccine from scratch, it's going to be attenuated, it's going to be a part of the virus, recombinant. I mean, how's going to be the vaccine? We're going to go for, it's the cheapest to do attenuated. Okay, how do we attenuate? What virus is going to be? How do we test? Blah, blah, blah. Then you have to do everything from scratch. In the case of SARS-CoV-2, we had, it was amazing, to be honest with you.
I agree.
It is pure luck. Well, if you're religious, whatever, the God, the universe, something. Like all this knowledge were already in place. Then they could just like, okay, we just need the genome. And then the genome came. And then they did all the required development to prove it. So it was fast. I agree that people, they got a bit scared because it was really fast. Because, I think the fastest was like 5 years of development. The rabies or like some infection.
Right.
It was quite fast. And then now this one in a few months. It's just because there were already decades of studies behind.
Right.
Decades.
Yeah. On the parts of the platforms.
Yeah.
To return back to the 536 document, the cumulative analysis of the adverse events, they Pfizer's documents, which is the one from where I got all the numbers. They ended every one of these AESIs, every system organ class. They ended with a conclusion, so including the ones that had fatalities, cardiovascular with 136 fatalities and so on, and with, by their judgment, thousands of serious cases, serious adverse events, that is. Their conclusion was, for all of them, this cumulative case review does not raise new safety issues. Surveillance will continue. And then in the discussion for the entire document, they say the data do not reveal any novel safety concerns or risks requiring label changes and support a favorable benefit-risk profile to the BNT162b2 vaccine, that is the Pfizer vaccine. And the summary and conclusion says the review of the available data for this cumulative PM experience confirms a favorable benefit-risk balance for the vaccine. Now, to me, when I see that they say there's thousands of serious cases, there's
among millions vaccinations.
Yes, of course, but there's thousands of serious adverse events and there's hundreds of fatalities at least. To conclude that this does not raise new safety issues, to me is like, well, why are we doing it then? Isn't the point to if some, like we said earlier, if we get fatalities that might be because of the vaccine, not even knowing it is because of the vaccine, but if it might be because of the vaccine, we need to pull it and investigate it further. And if we have thousands of serious adverse events by their admission and hundreds of fatalities, how is that not enough to say, okay, we need to study this further?
They did. And all these regulatory bodies and independent researchers, they all did. Like Karolinska, people studied, NIH, people studied, people in Brazil, and many other countries. And then they always try to make a connection between these cases and the vaccine itself. And then they could conclude that for the majority of this case, it's not caused by the vaccine itself.
Okay.
It's because the person was already infected, if the person didn't have full immunity yet, and if you had just one shot, then you get infected. Then is the virus causing damage to you, not the vaccine, because the vaccine is designed to don't cause these effects to you.
Right.
Some people are unlucky, they will have it. But when you go through the data and then you compare the incidence of these fatalities with what is expected from these demographics and this patient cohort, it's not an increase that is worrying. If it was, and they're still checking phase 4 data, they always revisit all this data, it's mandatory, they can see that is not above background.
Right.
Trust me.
I do.
Don't trust Pfizer, trust me. I'm joking.
No, that's great. I mean, because that is the final sentence in the conclusion was surveillance will continue, and that is very important that it continues.
Will. Yeah.
It's
done in Uppsala, checking all this data from Scandinavia. It's done in Brazil. It's done in the US.
Is this data presented anywhere? Where can it be found?
Probably yes. Probably. Yeah,
you can find so.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know how easy it is to get access to like a presentation, stuff that is easy.
I don't have to sue like they did to get the documents.
I mean, it was a bit, unnecessary to sue because they would give the data. It would just take some time.
55 years.
Yeah, because I mean, if you have, let's say you have 500,000 pages and because we don't have infinite people. If you can only release 10 papers a day, it's going to take 55 years.
If I told you I've invented this cure for whatever, any kind of disease, it's an injection. Let me inject it into your body.
Yeah. That's going to be checked by the regulatory bodies.
And you say, let me see the data. I'm like, sure, it'll take me 55 years to give it to you.
Yeah, it's because the data is not... It shouldn't and it can't be open access because you have patient information, you have doctors' information, you have company secrets. I mean, they are this for the business, right? So they need to protect their product. They need to know how it works, and that's sensitive information for the competitors.
Sure.
Like Moderna was also working on another mRNA vaccine, also very good safety profile, the same thing, both vaccine cohorts, really, really good. Then, of course, you need to make it as a secret. And then FDA didn't have enough people to redact part of the papers. Imagine how many people need to have to go through hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, I mean, they approved it in a few months. So
that is not like a conspiracy.
No, it doesn't have to be.
Someone in the FDA is like, oh no, we cannot show this data to people. No. Because this is reviewed by FDA, is reviewed by EMA, is reviewed by Anvisa, is reviewed by everyone.
Yeah.
And everyone said this safety profile is accepted. All the data we have seen is good enough.
Yeah.
And they received fast track, and that's it.
Yeah, in my opinion, no conspiracy is needed. People, there's monetary interest, there's fear because it's a pandemic, there's people not being, careful enough because you need to get this approved in a certain amount of time to get to the next step and so on. I don't think a conspiracy is needed. That's why stuff like the opioid crisis happens. Like we're flawed beings, and if we're working on a Operation Warp Speed, we're trying to save the world from this terrible pandemic. A lot of good intentioned people are going to cut corners to make things happen really fast.
For sure, that's for sure.
So I don't believe in people, puppet masters saying this or that, but I definitely believe in people making mistakes when they're under pressure. And a lot of money is in play.
Yeah, but this was checked by a lot of people.
Of course.
A lot of people. Independent bodies from every side.
We can move past the 536 document. There was also in the book a couple of autopsy reports.
Yeah, quite some
that were very interesting. That is like one of the worries about the lipid nanoparticles. Since they're designed to go through cellular walls, they can go through any cellular walls. So if they're injected in the arm, the preference is that they stay in the arm and go into the cells there and make the cell produce the spike protein and so on. But if it happens to move elsewhere in the body, and this might be, the virus itself, the vaccine itself might be great, but the person injecting might hit a blood vessel or something like that, and then the vaccine is transported somewhere else in the body, and it enters those cells, like in your heart or in the kidneys, as they had some cases in the book, or reproductive organs or whatever. It can go anywhere in the body, enter those cells, and then those cells start producing the spike protein, and of course the immune system comes to attack the spike proteins produced in those cells. So it can, traveling lipid nanoparticles can cause the system to attack different parts of the body by mistake, by chance. Not that the virus vaccine is flawed, just that it was fluffily delivered, wrongly delivered. Yeah. And that's what the autopsy showed, because they did autopsies on people who had died closely following vaccinations. And with, I don't remember what it's called, but the coloring system, they could show that
histochemistry.
Yes, thank you. They could show that these vaccine particles were in a bunch of different parts of the body. So what is your take on that? Like, reading those reports, is there something to that?
No, there's nothing to that.
There's nothing.
I really checked that in details, because the number of images presented in the book is overwhelming, which is quite interesting, because they try to show and make correlations between the vaccines with all these possible side effects. And then, thank you. Yeah, that's more than enough. Thanks. I drink a lot of water.
I know. We've been here a while.
Yeah. And the images, first of all, we know from the mice studies for clinical development that the LNPs, they don't travel that far. Even if I have a problem with the administration, they stay close to where they should be, which is the muscle where you administered. And even if a little part of them travel around, it's insignificant amount. And they are not, because they are traveling throughout the blood, they're not assimilated well by the cells that are supposed to receive them. So they are degraded. They go to the blood, they go to the liver, and they're degraded. Period.
Right.
But of course, it's rare, but you can find like a little pieces here and there. But not in significant levels that would drive a strong immune response to cause an organ damage. If that was true, they would see that in the animal models. You inject the mice, because they did a lot of in vivo mice experiments during SARS-CoV-1, MERS, etc. They have done that many, many, many times. So they know exactly how long they stay, where do they go, what do they do. So that would not be a big problem. What is a problem that I have seen in these autopsies is that you don't have a full description of the case. For example, one case was like a person that received a shot and then 7 days after died, and then they check the parts of the body like a heart, etc., and then they could see some spike protein there. Question is, one, was this person fully vaccinated? Was that caused by the vaccine or by the virus? Because that's an important question, right? You cannot just say, I found spike protein there. Oh, it's a vaccine. No, could be a spike protein coming from the virus.
They check that.
Yeah.
In some cases, in the autopsy reports, because they fragments from the virus have a different color when doing an histochemistry than fragments from the vaccine. So that was part of the study that they made sure it's not from the virus.
In some cases they do.
Yeah.
And what is important is that this technique, immunohistochemistry, has a lot of false positives. So when you're doing immunohistochemistry, you need to titrate the antibody you use. That we use, because if you put insanely a lot of amounts of antibody to detect something, even something that is negative will show up as positive. So you need to titrate, you need to have a good positive control, a good negative control. There are a couple of cases in the book. I think, if I remember by heart, 2 cases that they have this control, showing not just the spike, but the nucleocapsid protein as well, showing that, the nucleocapsid is not in the vaccine.
Yeah, it's in the virus.
Then it's the infection, this is the control, we use it, etc. Sometimes they have a positive control, negative control. Sometimes the data is true. Some people will have this.
Yeah.
It's 3 to 5 per million, and this would happen. And that's what we know right now. But what the book sells you is that most of people have the shit.
Yeah.
It's like, this is something that is frequent. It's like there's a lot of people getting that. It is not. It's insanely rare, and it happens. And that's important to highlight. Mm-hmm. And it's important to highlight that the incidence is way higher when you get the infection. Mm-hmm. And if you're vaccinated, you don't get the side effects.
Right.
From the severe infection.
Okay. I still think it's a completely different matter if you get hurt by the virus versus hurt by the vaccine, because one is, it's a virus, it's supposed to hurt me, but the other should not hurt me. So
yeah, but this is insanely rare.
Of course.
It doesn't justify to take out the vaccine from the market.
We can say that, like
especially
I said,
because it's transient and easy to treat.
Making the trade-offs, I agree. But to a person who gets myocarditis from the vaccine, you know, being rare is like not something they care about.
Of course.
If someone's life ends and, you know, it's because they took a medical intervention, that person, their family, everyone, you know, around them is suffering from something that we human beings did rather than a virus. So yes, I get it on a societal level doing the trade-offs, sure, but
it's like there will always be unlucky people, like the one in a million case. So
of course,
so if there is a 1 in a million chance of someone dying from a vaccine, from a severe side effect, why would we not treat the other 900?
No, I'm completely open to that.
That's the problem that we have with any drug that exists.
No, I said,
with any clinical trial. All clinical trials have flaws. All drugs have flaws. It's not perfect.
Yeah.
But the problem I have with the book is to show that these cases are everywhere.
It makes it seem like it's more common than it is.
More common than it is, and it is not. They exist, and it's nice that some people, and that's the magic. People are looking at this.
Yes.
If this was important, we would know it.
Yeah.
We would know it by these people that did this job. Some good stuff, most of that not so good, but by the regulatory bodies. So everyone is looking for it.
Right.
If there was a problem, we would find out. We will.
I certainly hope so.
Yeah.
The autopsy reports, if I understand correctly, these traveling lipid nanoparticles are the reason why, even though they're rare, the myocarditis cases happen. Because if it travels around in your blood system and ends up in your heart, it might cause a small tear. And then that's causes scarring.
Yeah, it's not a tear. It's like an overactivation of the immune system.
Right. The immune system attacks that region, and that causes scarring, and that is what myocarditis is. So,
but it's not like a direct attack. That's it is a bit more complicated. Of course, some cases could be directed by the spike protein that unluckily goes there. But in the interesting paper that they show, the Science Immunology paper, they can see that there are immune cells infiltrating the heart tissue, producing a lot of cytokines that is driving the symptoms and the side effect.
Right.
But they can see that it's not because they are specific for the spike protein. They are overactivated for some reason. But it's not because they are being specifically attacking parts of the heart.
But aren't they overactivated because there is...
Yes,
lipid nanoparticles and mRNA in the region?
Could be.
Yeah,
it could be.
So that is the concern, that for unlucky people, if it travels around, all of these different injuries might be because of that. Maybe the vaccine is perfect, nothing is perfect, but maybe the vaccine is perfect enough.
Yeah.
But the delivery mechanism with the lipid nanoparticles, the mRNA, poses some dangers. Maybe it shouldn't be injected. It should be.
But it doesn't. That's the point. It is 1 in a million. How can we say it's not good?
But that 1 in a million is one. I mean, if it can cause it.
But then we can have any drug.
No. Again, like the trade-offs is a different matter. What I'm trying to say is, if the vaccine might be great, but if it happens to travel somewhere where it shouldn't, it can cause injury. That's why myocarditis happens. Let's say it's like that. I don't know, but if that is the case, then that should be talked about, and then we should talk about maybe we should deliver this in a different way, or maybe not go into the arm, maybe go somewhere else, or whatever. Because if there is a chance, even 1 in a million, that if it goes into your blood system, you might get myocarditis, you might get a heart attack, you might die. It's something that we should, a risk that we should remove, even though it's very small. Like that is my point.
Yeah, but I mean,
if we can remove it, why not remove it?
I can assure you that they have done everything possible to see if this is the way. You know, if there is a way to improve the delivery system in order to avoid any possible side effects, they would have done it. It's because there's no other way. This formulation needs to be delivered intramuscular. And of course, it's easier to do it in your arm than in your ass, for example. There's another place that you can do in your legs. It's easier just to do it in the arm. And because they don't travel there for most of millions of people, then you don't expect to have this side effect. And it's very important to highlight that this side effect, when it happens, 1 in a million, it's mild, easy to treat, and it doesn't do permanent damage. Very few cases, like 1 in 100 million, would be permanent damage. That's very important to highlight. Even if you have the side effect, it's really mild. And if you compare the damage done by the virus, of course, I understand the take about the virus versus the vaccine. The damage done by the virus, that is severe. People that have long COVID, neurological damage, vascular damage, etc. from the virus. That's why the data on the vaccine is overwhelming about the safety.
Right.
Problems exist. And the efficacy. It's overwhelming.
Got it. How is myocarditis treated? That's scarring in the heart.
I am not a medical doctor. I would guess it would be corticoids.
Got it.
It's anti-inflammatory drug. But I don't know. Don't take this for granted.
No. From what I've seen and heard, once you have scarring, there's not much to do.
It's not scarring. There's no scarring associated with the vaccine. That's very important.
Okay.
There is inflammation that is transient and treatable.
Right, but the
inflammation... It's not scary, because scary means damage. You have damage in the tissue.
But that's what myocarditis is. That is...
There are many levels.
Yes,
can
of course.
Occlusive,
but once you have inflammation, the immune system attacks that area, and that is what causes scarring. So if you're unlucky, you get scarring. And to my understanding, like, this is permanent. You can't
1 in 100 million for sure.
Okay.
It is very rare.
Yeah.
Of course, it's important.
Of course.
And we know that because there's everyone looking at the data.
Right.
And it's overwhelming data. And it's open. All the bodies are checking it.
Why?
If this was a concern, they would try to understand, and they know already, that this is more likely to happen in young males. And then you can have specific actions for that. Or if that incidence is way too high, you take it out from the approval. So like everyone can take it, but not the young males. But they have seen that it's not worrying.
Right.
Because it's transient, not permanent, easy to treat.
With that, with a lot of people looking at this, with the continued surveillance, I would imagine I would know about it. Like, since I'm very interested, I went to read Pfizer's own documents because I'm very interested in this. And I am like moderate in my criticism of vaccines. As I hope you agree, I'm like trying to figure out the truth. I'm not saying they're bad or good, or I don't hate Pfizer or anything like that. There are millions of people out there that have zero faith in the pharma industry right now. Because of what happened. Sad. Yes, very sad. It's the most scary part of this whole thing, because we need the pharma companies. We're going to encounter situations in the future where we're going to need vaccines and so on and so forth.
Drugs.
I have a hard time seeing that this surveillance is being done, because with millions of people losing trust, I would imagine they would be blaring out the message like, look, we have followed up. This is the data.
The communication is quite bad.
I mean, not just bad, it's non-existent. Like I haven't seen any of that kind of communication. Like, oh, actually, we followed up these phase 1 people, phase 3 people that we also injected. They're doing like this now. I mean, why isn't it? Because
there should be national TV,
I'm
right?
Not even, I wouldn't even consider myself a skeptic. And there are millions of people who are very skeptic.
Very
skeptic. For some good reasons. Like
imagine how many podcasts exist about this. Just destroying the Pfizer like a
horrible. I'm
there might be many.
I'm like that. That's why I get upset when people call me an anti-vaxxer. It's like no, I want this to work because this is great. Like we need this technology. But if you tell me the data, if you tell me a car is like going to kill me every now and then, like hey, let's make a better car. So where is that communication? Like if all of these eyes are on this,
I'll be honest with you. I don't know how to access this data. No. What I know is that this data is periodically revised by FDA, EMA, the bodies, by the sponsor, by everyone, to make sure that it still fits in the same purpose.
Right.
And of course, there are many satellites. Like there is the pharmacovigilance in Uppsala for Scandinavia. There is in southern part of Europe, America, Brazil, etc. And they collect all this data and they do regular reports and check of the data to see, for example, if there's new cancers coming after this rollout. If there is it associated with the vaccine?
Right.
Or is it another thing? If there is any problems with pregnancy, if there is problems with neurological stuff or autoimmune diseases. So this is all being checked up all the time. But I don't know exactly how to open this because it's a pharma company that wants to, of course, keep their secrets for themselves. It's all for profit. And I think this is correct until a certain level because considering how important this was for everyone, and also I hear that from my mom, from people in my family, saying, I have seen that now the AstraZeneca vaccine is not being given anymore, blah, 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 blah. Then I explain why and everything. I don't know why it is not in the news. Like to say, hey, there is now a new report showing that the side effects exist. It's not above background. It's not associated with the vaccine. The ones that are easy to treat. The vaccines are insanely safe. Just take it. That would be beautiful. I don't know why the politicians don't do that. I don't know why it's not in the news. I think it's because most of the people are in ivory tower and they think they are better than everyone and people give them the big finger or something. I don't know. Yeah, I think that communication, and that's why podcasts and these ways of communication is very important. But it's important to talk to people that know stuff.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
When I read the book, I went through all the data. It's a very heavy book. It's like hundreds of pages.
Intense.
And then I was checking every data and following up to see how many doses were given, the incidents, etc. And then I got overwhelmed by the data that exists, showing the safety and showing the side effects, how rare and easy they are to go on, but they exist, and how this is not easy to access.
Right.
You need to go to know where to go and find out some publications.
Right.
It's not like in the news. It's not in the newspapers and BBC.
That to me is crazy.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they? I mean, they
it is sad.
Only Pfizer made a lot of money during the pandemic. They have the means to blare out to the world, listen, we've followed up. Here's the safety data. It's all good. Yeah. You can still trust us.
Yeah.
I don't...
because that's the data.
That's... I mean,
exactly. I don't know.
If it is, that's what they should be doing. I don't understand why they're not.
I don't know.
And that's the scary part. Again, I'm a moderate. There's so many people who hear just that and think, well, obviously because the data is not good, they don't want to blare it out because the data does not support. Like if they would be proud if the data was saying the vaccine is safe. And people are losing trust, and I think that's very, very sad. Like they could show that data to calm people's fears, but they're not.
They're not. That I can't defend.
No, of course.
The vaccine I can defend because I went through all the data and it's safe. It works. It's amazing. It's a great achievement for society, for us, like a Nobel Prize, like a well-deserved. Everything were done really well, especially because of the situation as well. But why this is not like in the news? I can't defend that.
No, crazy. So your overall thoughts on the book after having read it and looked through
very
it?
Biased to show like to make people scared, to show that like the vaccine can cause. Because if you read the book, and I did that I have a friend staying over my place. I showed people to coworkers, to my partner. Just going through this data. And if you look at this, so if you get vaccinated, automatically you're going to die. There is no point. No, automatically you're going to explode or something's going to happen to you because you're going to have this. If you're a woman, oh my God, you are going to die if you're a woman. But no, this is not true. Is the book is very ambitious to show just one side of the coin, and very biased and not well controlled, and not showing the big picture. Because the big picture is it's insanely safe, it works, just take a shot.
Got it. Very much appreciated, Lucas. Is there anything else that we haven't covered that you thought of that you would want to bring up before we wrap things up?
No, I think it's so good. I mean, there's this big, the beginning of the book's about the birth rates. This is all because of the pandemic, not because of the vaccine. The data has shown A+B that there is no problem with fertility in men and women. There's no problem with the babies. The breast milk, it doesn't go through your breast milk. The baby doesn't get access to it.
How do we know that?
Oh, just take the breast milk and check. They have done that. In the few cases that they found out, the amount is insignificant. And then when the baby sucks it up and ingests, it's going to be destroyed by the
baby's immune system?
Not the immune system, like the stomach and the digestive system.
I don't know.
So
Pfizer's own adverse event reports say 270 cases with, spontaneous abortions and stuff like that.
That's not a increase because of the vaccine. It's because it be related to people having abortions.
It just happens. All right.
This is the data. I promise. I went through this.
Got it.
So there's no problem for women either. It's like
well, the CDC have stopped recommending it to pregnant women.
Yeah, I have to check that up. Why? Probably it's because there is no need anymore, right? I mean, why would you take a vaccine if you're pregnant now, you have been vaccinated before, right? So why would you get another shot? I think that's the rationale.
Could be.
Yeah, it's the same for the AstraZeneca vaccine that is not being used anymore. It's just like because that's a viral vector. It's another technology, expensive to manufacture, etc. Why would you keep ultra freezers running and all the shots waiting to be used?
Yeah, but
if there's no one to receive.
That one was drawn back because of the increased risk of myocarditis, if I recall correctly.
It's a thrombosis.
Thrombosis, yeah. So they saw a signal and they were like, this signal is strong enough for us to pull it from the market.
It was not because of safety. It was mostly because the pandemic was over. And then
No. The AstraZeneca was pulled during the pandemic. People were still getting vaccinated with the other shots.
Yeah, so
this was very early on.
It was better to receive the other shots then.
Yes.
It was in March, right? March 2021?
Not considered as safe as the other ones. Yeah, somewhere around there.
Yeah. You had some thrombosis associated with the vector that they used.
Cool. Thank you very much.
That's my pleasure.
I really appreciate this.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Hope to come back again at some point.
Absolutely. Yeah. We have a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
Your research itself, like we should just
let's do that after summer.
For sure.
Discuss immunotherapy, cancer treatment.
Sounds good.
Or the opioid crisis. I'm a pharmacist, so that's something that I really like it.
For sure. Yeah. Thank you very much.
That's my pleasure.
Thank you to everyone who listened. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.